Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Reap the Spoils. I'm Mark Sullivan.
I'm Delaila Lugo.
I'm Jason Kwasnicki.
And this is a Spoilercast where we're going to talk about a video games in the title. We'll say the name. Actually, Delaila, what game are we talking about today?
Ghost of Tsushima.
Aha! So, if you have not played Ghost of Tsushima, please pause right here. Don't listen to the episode because we don't want to be the thing that spoils this game for you. This is a spoiler cast, so we're going to be digging deep into the story. We're going to be digging deep into the mechanics, the gameplay, pretty much everything the game has to offer. We don't want to ruin that for you, and especially not this game. I feel like I say that about every game that we cover.
Yeah.
Especially about this game. Spoilers. It's all of them. So if you have not played this game, please pause the episode, go play the game, and then come back to listen to our sultry voices speak on our thoughts of this game. Which, spoilers, first spoiler, I think we all really liked this game.
Yes.
Yes.
I think we were all pretty big fans of this game. Kind of a rarity for the crew at Dead Cell Media that we all agree that a game is super good.
Yes.
So yeah, that being said, shall we dive into a little bit of history on Ghost of Tsushima?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Ghost of Tsushima was developed by Sucker Punch Productions, which is a Sony first-party developer. Their first game was Rocket Robot on Wheels, which I never played. I think that was an N64 game.
Yeah, I've
only
never even heard of it until now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the first game was Rocket Robot on Wheels, which was an N64 exclusive. But after that, they made the Sly Cooper trilogy, which is near and dear to my heart.
Same.
Super near and dear to my heart. And then after that, they made the Infamous games on the PS3 generation, which was...
And PS4.
It did stretch into the PS4. Wasn't their first foray into open world. Sly 2 kind of has a small-ish open world feeling to it. It has like multiple small open worlds that you go through and explore. So that can kind of, with open world and Sucker Punch, we can kind of date back to around that time. But Infamous was like a first true open world setting for their video games. Infamous Second Son and Infamous First Light, they both came out in 2014, and it was a while until we knew what Sucker Punch was making. After First Light released in 2014, they started trying to decide on the setting for their next game, and they toyed around with a couple ideas. Apparently, an early idea for the setting would be pirates, like a pirate setting. And they also had an idea for maybe doing a Three Musketeers type game.
Yeah, normally what I read was that, or heard, or I don't remember, but normally like when you have pre-development talks, you have like a dozen or two pitch meetings. Apparently there was something like 100 pitch meetings for this game.
Yeah,
It
they're
was ridiculous.
from what I'm rapidly finding out, reading more and more about games development, the game that you end up with is nothing necessarily like the game that you start with. Right. And with this, there were lots of different settings that they considered before they finally landed on doing a game set in the year 1274 Japan, focusing on the Mongol invasion of Japan. When they finally landed on that setting and they started trying to develop the game and get the feel of it right, they consulted a lot of people. They consulted cultural experts, sword fighting experts. They wanted this game to be as historically accurate as possible. And as we found out somewhat recently with the Kurosawa mode in the game, where it gives it the black and white grainy film feel with the tin kind of audio sound. They worked really closely with the Kurosawa Foundation to get the feeling of samurai cinema completely right which is a really cool just bit of trivia, and really shows the attention to detail that they wanted to go with making this game feel right.
I'll be mentioning Kurosawa a lot in this talk because I love Kurosawa.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you want to watch Kurosawa films and have HBO Max, I think most of them are up there right now.
That's good to know because...
What's your number one recommended Kurosawa?
I think my personal favorite, and I actually just watched it on Friday just because I wanted to watch one before this, just to like
Jason did his homework.
Get into that feel to make the comparisons. I think my personal favorite would probably be Yojimbo.
It's also one of the coolest summons in Final Fantasy X.
It's a very simple story. If you've seen A Fistful of Dollars with Clint Eastwood, that movie is legitimately just a ripoff of Yojimbo in a loving way. When they made A Fistful of Dollars, if I remember the story correctly, they didn't actually have a script. Sergio Leone was just like, well, Clint Eastwood, this happened in this scene, so let's go. You say this, action.
Let's make a Western version of a beloved samurai film.
Basically.
Cool. All right. That's good to know though, because I after playing this game, I definitely want to go and watch Kurosawa films, and knowing that they're on HBO Max, that they
I know Yojimbo is up there. I saw Hidden Fortress. I saw Seven Samurai. Seven Samurai is the most relevant one to this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, the game was revealed at Paris Games Week 2017. That's when we finally got our first look at Ghost of Tsushima. We got the gameplay reveal at E3 2018, which I thought was interesting because I remembered that reveal, and I remembered the mission that they showed, and I was waiting for it to come up, and it's actually a side quest in the main game. Which I totally wasn't expecting, because it seemed like I mean, we'll get into how the side quests affect them or affect the main story, and how a lot of them really feel like main story content set as side tales, but
it also is a spoiler for a side quest.
Yeah,
if you think about it.
If you it's a good thing I mostly forgot about it until the I got to it in the game, and I
don't even remember seeing it. I only remembered, or I didn't even remember. I only found out about that after the fact. I don't think I saw it.
And getting context behind it was really cool. But yeah, we got our gameplay reveal at E3 2018. You know, we've gotten several trailers over the past 6 to 12 months, just showing little bits of more details, and we got a state of play a couple months ago focusing entirely on the game and detailing its gameplay mechanics. The release date was originally set for June 26th, 2020. It was delayed by almost a month to July 17th because of a lot of it has to do with coronavirus and the other delays that games got this year, like Iron Man VR and The Last of Us Part 2. But this game ultimately came out on July 17th. And another thing that came out recently that's kind of relevant was it seems like Sucker Punch had another game in development, and an 11-minute gameplay demo got leaked recently of a game called Prophecy. It was kind of a stealth action game, and the build seemed to have been from the year 2015, which for 2015 it looks like it was pretty far along. Like it didn't look really bad. There was a lot of work done to it that made it seem like it wasn't just thrown together in a year.
It might have been a vertical slice, but I mean, we'll never know, probably.
But it still seems like it was like it was at least like maybe 2 years in development at that point, just from what it showed and from how it looked. It definitely seemed far enough along. It was definitely a vertical slice for sure, but still, it was frankly kind of impressive. Whether or not the gameplay appeals to you is a whole nother thing, and I don't know if I want to encourage looking up leaked footage. Just because that gets into some ethical, moral gray areas, but I thought it was worth mentioning. I feel like it's part of why it took so long for Sucker Punch to reveal and put out their next game, because seemingly another one was in development. and I guess got canceled since we've never seen it outside of a couple weeks ago. So that's the end of my long drawn out history lesson.
You forgot, with the release of this game, this is the third Western release game ever to receive a perfect score from Famitsu.
That is a good point.
Nice.
We didn't. I kind of fell off of talking about how these games are received in the history lesson, but this game was received really well, and especially by Japanese audiences for a Western game. Jason already said it. Famitsu gave it a perfect 40 out of 40, which is the third Western game to do so. What were the other two, Jason?
Skyrim and GTA 5.
Yeah,
I think.
Nice.
And it's been a while since GTA 5 was 2013, so that was the last time they gave a perfect score to a Western release game. So it's been a long time, and there haven't been that many of them. Famitsu definitely leans more towards Japanese games, giving them higher scores. But
and even then, I think the list is only like 30 something, leaning towards 40 overall.
Yeah. So yeah, that's really impressive. It's I guess another thing to point out was that the creator of Yakuza, he made a comment that was kind of taken out of context a little bit. It was a little bit misreported, a lot for clickbaity reasons. But the Yakuza director and creator stated that the game, a Japanese developer should have made a game, and what he meant by should have made the game, and what he meant by that was he meant that a Japanese developer should have taken it upon themselves to do something like this sooner. Should have taken it upon themselves to make a game that's set in an old feudal Japan era with more realistic and relatable characters.
Yeah.
And it's ironic coming from him, considering how crazy Yakuza is and how conventionally attractive almost all the characters are. And for him to say this about this game, I feel like it's a huge point of honor. That Sucker Punch, I don't think, is taking lightly. I think they're very much riding on cloud 9 after the reception of this game.
This game is definitely, and I guess we'll get to it towards the end, but this is definitely their uncharted moment.
Yeah.
Where they've now entered the big boy league, I would say.
Sure. Yeah, I guess we could say that. So yeah, that's it for the history lesson. I think now we can jump into the game if you guys are ready.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear, Jason, though. I know you're a big history buff. As our resident history major, I am curious to hear
there's some elements. Yeah, there's some elements of the historical stuff. Honestly, a lot of it has to do with we'll get into it, themes borrowed from not just Kurosawa, but other stuff as well. But we'll get into it.
Yeah, I was reading on some history. This was definitely. I mean, it's historical fiction, so of course it's going to take liberties, and it's not the first game to do so. Metal Gear has been doing it for years, or was doing it for years, I guess.
Jungles in the Soviet Union, yeah.
Let's go right into let's do what we usually do. Let's go right into the ending. I think we can safely do that with this game. So Jin defeating Khotun Khan, I don't think is much of a surprise. I figured
that's not the real ending, and it's not the focus of the game.
True. It's very much he's a very, very, if we want to just go black and white, he's a very black threat. He's just very, very clearly evil, and the game was leading up to just him inevitably being defeated. So that's not really much of a surprise. But the game, especially around the midpoint, takes a very clear direction in not focusing on Jin versus the Khan, but Jin versus his uncle, Lord Shimura. And after the defeat of Khotun Khan, he goes to meet up with Lord Shimura because Jin has kind of given up on being an honorable samurai, and he's become essentially an enemy of the state, an enemy of the shogun.
So you use the word honorable, and this is the true core of the story here, and it's one of the things that makes this, in my opinion, one of the best video game endings I've ever played.
Mm.
This story is all about, and there are lots of stories throughout fiction, political fiction, science fiction that toy around with this idea of true honor versus fake honor. So when you say Jin decides that he's not going to be an honorable samurai, quote unquote, is not actually honorable. The code of Bushido that the samurai follow, as is seen in this game and in actual history, it's really just a facade. It's a charade for the nobility to be able to maintain control over the peasant classes. Because at the end of the day, the whole reason that Lord Shimura has to follow the orders of the shogun in keeping with this quote-unquote code of honor is that the shogun is afraid that Jin, having kind of undermined this code of honor, has inspired the peasantry and fears that he can use that power to lead a peasant revolt against the ruling class within Tsushima.
Right.
I like that. That's a very interesting perspective. Well, not even perspective, but like you're putting some historical context into this. How I interpreted it is that I actually consider Lord Shimura to be one of those people who, if I'm going to fight you, I'm going to fight you in your face. I'm not going to be sneaky about it. And so there's never like any like shady, underhanded attacks. Like he's always kind of like one of those things like, oh, I'm not going to sucker punch you. Sucker punch. Oh, look at that. Like, I'm going to make sure that if we're going to fight, you know I'm going to attack you. There's no surprises, which is why the ghost mechanics like stealth and using shuriken or kunai rather, and smoke bombs and other gadgets are considered dishonorable. So I thought he was just like honoring that was his code of honor, is facing people head on with nothing sneaky, so that your enemy kind of has the same fighting grounds as you. You guys are on the same level.
Well, the idea historically was that the whole reason behind that was that the peasantry could never afford the same kind of equipment and the same kind of armor and arms that the samurai could, because the samurai were nobility. I mean, think of a peasant versus a knight in a Western frame of mind. Knights very rarely died on the battlefield because they were so well armored, versus peasantry who went in with boiled leather and mail and were fucking massacred because they were just the average foot soldier.
And that makes sense, because Jin was for the people. Like the reason why he chose ghost tactics is because
the core of his character is that and that's the reason he actually displays true honor, is because he's willing to do whatever it takes for his people. He loves his people.
And his country, and the island, the country as a whole.
Yeah,
and the land.
That's what makes this actually, in terms of story structure, it makes it a tragic story. It's a tragedy. That's Jin's in the very same vein as more modern tragic heroes. Like the most popular would probably be Batman.
Yeah.
Batman's Hamarsh. I forget if it's pronounced Hamartia or Martia. It's an Aristotelian Greek term for tragic heroes. It's their fatal flaw, basically. In the case of Batman, his fatal flaw, but also his greatest strength, is his love for Gotham and the fact that he will not kill, which is also his biggest weakness. And it dooms him to fight crime forever and never have a normal life, because he won't just go in and fucking kill all the villains, and he'll never rest until Gotham is peaceful, whatever. Same with Jin. Jin is doomed to be thrown out as an outcast from the noble society he was part of and fight forever for his people because of his love for his people. And he rejects this fake honor system because he has true honor.
Right.
And that's why I think that, and the way they dichotomize the options, because you do get two options at the very end of the game.
Yeah.
It's one of the you get choices and dialogue throughout the game, but it's one of the only, if the only, really impactful choices you're given.
And while playing, it almost made me think, if Infamous had a morality system, and depending on like not even choices you made in story beats, But like if you even just started murdering pedestrians and stuff, it would affect your morality and wean you more towards evil than good. I almost wonder what this game would have been like, not from like murdering innocents or not, or choosing not to kill people, but like if you played more of the ghost than as a samurai. I wonder if it was ever thought of to include a morality system like that, to kind of affect the ending as opposed to just that ending choice.
Yeah,
If you
I
use
thought
more ghost tactics than samurai tactics, if there was ever some sort of system like that in mind, because I think that would have been really cool. Not necessary, but really cool.
Yeah, when I saw the state of play, I thought that that's the direction they were leaning towards when they were showing the ghost versus samurai elements. And then when I was playing the game, I felt inclined to do more samurai standoffs instead of doing stealth tactics because I thought that the game wanted me to lean in that direction. And I feel like if they would have given us the choice, the story that was told wouldn't have been told the way it was, and it would have been as good.
Right.
Like, I think they want Jin to be a ghost. And so had we been given the choice to be more quote unquote honorable, we wouldn't have had such a climactic ending, I feel.
And to be honest, I throughout the game, I kind of role played it. At the beginning, I was definitely like doing standoffs and not being sneaky because I felt that I was just trying to role play it. Jin at that point in the game would try to be more honorable and be less likely to try to be sneaky and just murder from the shadows. But as it goes on and the Mongols start taking on, worse tactics and just generally be more evil, and I started getting more of an arsenal to play more ghost-like, I started taking on that mantle as he would through the story. I kind of role-played it just like that, and I mean, I had a good time with it.
Yeah, and we'll talk, I guess, a bit more about that when we get to like combat and gameplay.
Yeah,
I think their primary concern was that the player have agency and freedom to do whatever they wanted, because you really couldn't. That's one of this game's greatest strengths, is how fun it is just because you can play however you want.
Yeah.
Ultimately, though, I love the way the game ends, particularly because either choice, the character comes to the same arc. There isn't a major change in Jin's arc. It's how his character and how not the new Jin, but from his new perspective, how he chooses to approach it.
Let's back up. Let's discuss the choice, because I think that's the big thing everyone wants to talk about is what choice did you make and why. So after the battle with Lord Shimura, you're given the choice after defeating him to either spare his life or to kill him.
So I think we should say what we chose without explanation, all three of us, and then explain.
Sure. I have a feeling we all chose the same thing anyway.
I thought that, but now I'm starting to doubt it a little bit.
Okay.
I didn't kill him.
Okay, I killed him.
Oh my god, Delaila, you monster!
Am I though? Am I?
I also spared him. So let's start with you, Delaila. Why would you kill your uncle?
Yeah. So one, he asked for it. He wanted to die honorably. And while I feel like Jin, me killing him goes against everything he's kind of worked towards. Like, he doesn't go by this honor code, and killing him was an honorable way for him to go out. So it almost seems like that's the opposite decision of what Jin would have made. I felt like this was a time for me not to be selfish as Jin, to not kill my uncle when he wanted to be killed and known as a warrior and known as somebody that lived by the samurai code until the day he died. And I felt like because he asked me for that decision, as someone who still loved my uncle and was trained by him and respects him as a human being, as an uncle, as a father, I thought I needed to put my own morals aside for his code to live on, because this was his life, not mine. Like, this wasn't about Jin. This was about Lord Shimura. And so I felt like I needed to fulfill his own wishes, because it's not my life to decide. And he made it clear what he wanted.
Okay.
Yeah, and I I actually completely agree with Delilah's reasoning there. That's why I say I love this ending and the choices they give you so much, is that either way, both choices adhere to Jin's character arc, because ultimately he's rejecting the honor code and embracing his love of the people, and that includes Lord Shimura, who he has seen and still sees to a degree as a father figure. So you can either do what I did, and I chose to do what I did because it's ultimately him showing Lord Shimura that this is all a facade, this whole honor code, you know, forcing death upon yourself because you lost this duel. It's ridiculous. It's a sham. It's a power play. But Delaila, what she chose to do is to give Lord Shimura what he wanted out of love for Lord Shimura, not because the honor code dictated it.
Right.
Which ultimately, it's the same character. It's just two different ways of looking through that lens.
It's two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, exactly.
They're both totally valid choices, and yeah, I agree with you. I love this ending for that reason, where like it's not a case of the good ending and the evil ending, or a case of even like the samurai ending or the ghost ending. They're both it's both just like, it's like the compassionate ending or the realization ending, I guess, where you compassionate, you don't want to kill your uncle, or no, the compassionate ending of like you do kill your uncle because it's his wish and it's his will, or the realization ending where you show him like this is, you don't have to do this is proof that this is not something that you need to abide by, this is not something that you're forced to do, you don't have to abide by this code because I'm rejecting it, and as a result, I'm going to keep my home safe.
Did you guys see both endings? Like, did you YouTube
Yes.
the other? Okay.
I didn't see the kill Shimura ending. I probably should have watched that prior to this, but
when Delaila, I think this is another little. It's not his main arc, but it is kind of an undercurrent, which goes. A lot of people I've seen in like reviews and discussions online have talked about how Jin is a kind of a boring character. He's not meant to be boring. He's meant to be stoic. And throughout most of the game, it's kind of like Samurai Jack, where throughout a lot of the game, it's more about the characters around him changing and growing and evolving. And his change is more of a slow burn.
yes,
Where most of it happens throughout the second and third act.
Yeah.
But I think there's an important note to be made. There is that flashback that we see relatively early on of his father's death.
yes,
And his father is showing fear when he does. He's reaching out to a very young Jin who is hiding out of fear to help him. And of course, Jin, runs off because he's afraid. He's a fucking child, and
he's afraid, he's untrained, he's helpless.
Yeah, exactly. And his father is killed. He's stabbed through the back as he's crawling on the ground. And we see throughout the game Jin remaining very stoic, and he's doing this obviously because, as we see through other flashbacks throughout the game, Lord Shimura is teaching him that he needs to control his emotions. He needs to be patient. It's a very like Jedi kind of philosophy there. But Delaila, you know this because you actually saw the ending. When you kill Lord Shimura, he cries out. And I think this has to do with another kind of smaller bit of arc that we see throughout the game. And I think we see this a lot, most prominently with Yoriko's quests. As we learn more about things that happened in his past between him and his father, we learn more about how he's actually not so different from his father than he thought he was.
Yeah.
His father was apparently also much more rebellious than he thought he was, particularly when it came to the samurai code, and much more of an emotional person. and we see Jin kind of embracing that emotion as the game goes on.
The cherry blossom doesn't fall far
Right.
from the tree. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the reason why I felt satisfied with my ending, and I can see them both being satisfying because I did watch the spare ending after I beat it, is because he acknowledged Lord Shimura as someone that's going to be remembered as a great warrior, a great father, and Lord Shimura seemed happy to die that way. He even called Jin his son as part of his last words. And yeah, when Jin killed him, he cried out in sadness, but also like he knew that that's what his uncle wanted. I feel like with the ending where he was spared, Jin kind of walks away while his uncle is pretty much incapacitated and can't really do anything. And I feel like that's just a really shitty way to leave someone that you love, you know, and walk away from that. Like, it was badass. Like, nah, like, Unc, like, I'm gonna do what I want. Like, this is my way. Like, you'll be aight.
Jin does bow to him, and he says, "I will not kill my family or loved ones." So, like, there's definitely still, and I think it's important to talk about what the exact phrasing that Lord Shimura uses there when he says, "The ghost will be hunted forever." Now, obviously, he's implying that the Shogun is going to have him going after him to the end of his days.
Yeah.
But it's heavily implied that Lord Shimura, not even implied, flat out said, doesn't want this. It's punishment. Like, there is still very much a loving relationship there. And Jin says during the fight that he's a slave to his honor system. Mm-hmm. I don't remember if it's during or before the fight, the final fight.
It was right before.
Was it right before? Yeah.
Yeah. So
overall, very emotional, very well directed. It should be said too.
Yeah.
The sun setting in the background. They're in a cemetery with the memorial to Jin's father right behind them, and that tree right over that, hanging right over them.
If we really just want to, like, just take a minute and just say it, like, there's not a bad shot in this game.
No.
There is not a single thing that looks bad or ugly. The entire game, presentation, setting, graphics.
And it's not a super high detailed game either. Like,
no.
From a technical perspective, if you were to have, what's that channel called that goes over?
Digital Foundry.
Yeah, if you were to have them go over like textures and I made a note to do this, to go in real deep and like look at the textures. They're not super impressive, especially coming off something like The Last of Us 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the way it's all composed and the way they use the camera to kind of spread it out and give you that large panoramic view and have all these colors contrasting. For
cutscenes, using the black bars to make it more cinema feel. It's just it.
Yeah, the widescreen look. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Delaila.
No, I was just gonna say it is the most beautiful game without being the most graphically impressive.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's like
I
Breath
took
of the Wild in that respect. Yeah.
Yeah, but except more beautiful. And
I agree.
It's the most beautiful game I've ever played, like hands down. And I took 220 screenshots.
Oh, you beat me. I think I have I have like 160.
Nice.
I did hold back because there was like more that I wanted to take, but realizing that a lot of those I mostly take the screenshots for the video version of this show, and I didn't want to overload it with like a bunch. And a lot of the screenshots that I wanted to take that I just held back on were just like when you start or end a mission and there's that vignette like zooming in on like a leaf or a bell or something with the vertical kanji and the title of the mission. Like there's not a single shot in this game that looks bad. Every single one is gorgeous or just feels like immensely, it like exudes power and exudes style. It's almost like Persona 5 in that sense. Yes. Like totally different art direction, but there's not like everything looks just so gorgeous because of that art direction, because of that the style that they decided to go with in the world.
Even the skybox, like,
yeah,
and the range, not just the range of weather patterns, which, by the way, the weather patterns, if you pay attention, actually change based on your style of play.
Yeah.
The more ghost-like you play, you start getting worse and worse thunderstorms,
Yeah.
which are fucking beautiful. Like,
And then you can also, if you find the crickets, you can learn songs on your flute that also alter the
yes.
weather. Um, there's, yeah. But I just wanted to, if there was ever a time to bring it up, you're talking about that final duel. Everything in this game is just drop dead gorgeous. The use of color. I'm not sure that the island of Tsushima can really have that many different biomes.
Yeah, it's basically a planet. A planet.
It's a very
its own
small island. Like if you look at it on a map, and like Japan itself is a small country, but like this is just a small island.
Yeah.
I never actually. I don't know if you looked this up. I never bothered to. Does it adhere relatively loosely to the actual outline of the island?
I
the
don't.
way the
I don't.
map
Well,
is structured?
as far as the map is structured, yes, it is pretty much just a vertical island. If I recall from what I saw, like I said, I think the biomes were kind of,
Yes.
liberties were taken there. Because of how small it is and where it's located on the globe. Like, there's no way you go to that northern section and it's just like the only area on the island that's snowy.
I think they kind of cheated by having, because a lot of the game kind of takes place in starting from late summer to the dead of winter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a thematic thing that works to help drive the story and
like
also
that
other background stuff.
As time
But
progresses,
they kind of cheat by having it when you go back to earlier sections. It doesn't like go to winter there
it's
too.
like you're going back in time to like a past season.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is like fine. Like it didn't really bother me. I found it funny more than anything. But it did allow for just a
It's gamey.
Yeah.
And I like that about this game. It's not afraid to be gamey.
Yeah.
And I think it works in its favor in a lot of ways.
Very much.
It doesn't take away from the game at all. Even the places that were meant to be quote unquote ugly, like the endless forest, were still beautiful in their own way because they just depicted so much emotion.
Yeah.
Like all the trees were dead. There was no like beautiful flowers and whatever. Like maybe there was a fox, but like there wasn't much like wildlife. And it was still like it was just like a burning forest, and it was beautiful in that way, even though it wasn't meant to be as breathtaking as like a field of blood red flowers with trees and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was like beauty and destruction.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, there's not any screenshot you could possibly take in this game could be like a framed photo. It is just that beautiful, that varied, and yeah, it's incredible. So I think this is a good time to transition over to talking about the character tales. Some of the character tales that, because like they're like framed as side tales. They're not like Jin's journey.
But yeah, like, you can end the game without finishing them.
But the ones that focus on specific characters are practically main story. They're just like like side main story. There's like main story, side main story, and then side story.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like the B stories.
But like they're
a structural perspective. They don't really
almost as like. Go ahead.
They are in many ways as integral, and they do affect your main story progression in some ways, like dialogue that characters will say before and during missions, and.
Yeah, I feel like if you don't do them, you're doing yourself a disservice. Absolutely. Because fighting by their side feels so much better than if I can't imagine how it would feel if you didn't do those first.
And
totally agree.
You won't really get the full grasp of Jin's story without theirs. Yeah. Because there are a lot of common themes strung throughout all of them that have to do with a lot of the themes of the story as a whole.
But I do like, from a pacing perspective, we covered Days Gone last year, and one of my biggest complaints about Days Gone was that it has one of the things I liked, and yet one of my biggest complaints about Days Gone was those like those different story threads where there were different progressions of different stories regarding specific characters, but like you can't really do them at your own leisure. It will force you to do all of certain storylines at certain times in order to progress the main story, and they're all kind of part of the main story. And I didn't really like that because it just like it just felt a little messy in execution, and I think that this kind of did it perfectly, where they have these side tales that are ostensibly optional, but they're so engrossing and so riveting, and they do affect dialogue and things that they say to one another in the main story well enough that they're kind of worth doing. But the stories themselves are just so interesting that why wouldn't you do them? Like, why wouldn't you go track down Tomoe with Sensei Ishikawa, because like that story was so cool. It was so interesting to go mission to mission and find out what the hell Tomoe is up to. And
you also learn more about Ishikawa, and you also learn more about the world as a whole through them.
Yep.
Like everything's tied together. Like there are other quests, and you hear tales about older warriors who have long since passed, and Ishikawa is kind of tied to, what was it, Nadago, who you get his bow and like his armor or whatever from that clan. And apparently like that Ishikawa is famous for having taken and tried to pass down that bow style. Lady Masako is part of, what was it, the Adachi clan?
The Adachi clan.
And in the beginning of the game, and I thought this was really cool, in the very beginning of the game, at the Battle of Komoda Beach, Lord Shimura sends out his greatest warrior, the Lord of Clan Adachi, and Kochin Khan literally lights him on fire and just cuts off his head.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, that's a cool character moment and a great way to introduce a villain. But that's actually tied in later on because that's Lady Misako's son, right?
Son I think it was her husband.
Was it her husband? Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that's something we could talk about real quick too. Was that opening was like a really good opening for how brutal this game was going to be. The first major like thing that happens was Adachi goes down, gets set on fire, and then decapitated. It's like, oh, this is how brutal this game is going to be. There were a shit ton of decapitations throughout this game.
Yeah.
Way more than I expected.
Beautiful field of flowers and then like a head on a pick with blood all over. Just going back to the point that you made about Days Gone and its structure, I feel like this game would have benefited from a structure like that because it wouldn't have felt as bogged down, because I did all the side missions before doing the main mission and it felt supernatural. I feel like if it had the structure of Days Gone where it forced you to do those main tales, at least, not even the little side tales, the main tales with like the core characters, Lady Masako, Sensei Ishikawa, I don't feel like people would have had that as a criticism. I feel like they would have almost thanked the game for making them do those missions first. Like, the only people that would have been bogged down with that is like journalists who had, embargo dates.
Yeah, and I think I don't disagree, because it would have I guess it would have forced people to see those stories, and it would have made it less likely that they wouldn't have seen them. But I think a lot of the credit also in keeping those stories and those tales as side content and ostensibly optional content. It helps that the pacing of almost every mission was really on point. It didn't
spot on.
No mission really felt like a slog to get through. Whereas I can't really say the same about like a game like Days Gone. And I don't want to keep comparing this to that. It's just when playing through this game, my first thought about Ghost of Tsushima when I really got into it was, this has a shit ton of Days Gone's DNA and a shit ton of Horizon Zero Dawn's DNA. And Days Gone was
funny. I didn't see the Horizon in it, but
I thought the Horizon because its open world felt a lot like Horizon's. Its crafting and gathering system felt a lot like Horizon to me. Even
it might just be I don't really remember Horizon all that well.
That's totally fine. And it wasn't like a huge comparison. I felt the comparison much more with Days Gone in that quest structure. But yeah, the pacing of every mission is it's perfect. No mission feels like a slog. It doesn't feel like, oh god, when is this mission going to end? No. You get a mission and it's over within 10 minutes. And they're all so interesting.
And that's a very Kurosawa thing.
Yeah.
the plot is to the point. There's no like I told you I was watching Yojimbo the other day.
Yeah.
Yojimbo's an hour and a half long. Like the plot is extremely to the point, very little fat.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah.
this game respects your time. Like the loading times are super fast. I have an SSD, so I don't know if it's a little slower without it, but it like I couldn't read the little messages it had on the loading screens.
From what I understand, they had to make the loading times longer so that people could actually read those hints.
Yeah.
I have not changed my PS4 Pro's hard drive, and it was lightning fast.
Yeah, like I'm used to like when I'm going into another mission, picking up my phone real quick, looking at a notification. The minute I picked up my phone, I was in the game.
It's
ready
not
to
worth
go.
it. It's not worth it to like have those little distractions because you go to fast travel and you're there. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Side comment: those notes were actually very helpful because I was in the beginning of the game. I was killing all the deer I saw because I thought I would get resources.
You monster!
And then I saw the note that's like deer on the island of Tsushima are considered holy. Now I felt bad. I felt so bad.
It's deer.
I didn't kill anymore the rest of the game.
It's really deer in Japanese culture, like entirely. There's parks and places in Japan proper, like around Tokyo, where you can go and feed the deer and like they'll bow to you and you bow to them and stuff.
Aww.
Like deer.
Well, I thought that's
sacred.
how you got leather. That's why I was doing it.
Gotcha. You monster.
I hadn't encountered like the wild boar and whatnot yet.
Murdering the poor deer.
When I killed one deer and saw it didn't give me anything, I was like, oh, oops.
I guess
Sorry.
I guess a quick thing I'll bring up, a funny anecdote. I was invading a Mongol camp, and there was a Mongol like tending to a horse, and I took out my bow, went to aim at the Mongol, and I was struggling a lot with the aiming mechanics at the beginning of the game for some reason. So I shot an arrow at the Mongol. I missed, and I killed his horse.
Oh,
and
no.
I felt so bad.
Yeah.
I felt so
I
bad
always try to avoid killing
Dude,
the horses.
My horse got so abused. Oh God, we'll talk about it, but it hurts so much to talk about Nobu.
Let's talk about it right now.
But,
well, let me just make a quick note though about how it also respects your time, since we're talking about the open world.
Yeah.
More games need to be this small in terms of open world. We don't, like you said, there was no fat to be cut, but also you can fast travel to every single fucking thing you discovered.
Yeah.
Like that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like I never had to like ride back. Not that I wouldn't have minded because it's a beautiful game, but
yeah.
NPCs run with you. When you run, they hop on their horse when you hop on your horse.
That's the
which
thing.
The Witcher 3 did that too, but
this was one of the best. I feel like we should finish talking about the characters before we get back to the horse.
We need to go back to the characters, but we keep getting sidetracked.
But I will say you mentioned the horse and like movement. This is without a doubt, in my opinion, the best game horse ever.
oh yeah,
In terms of like and forget about the story. We'll get to that. In terms of just mechanically controlling the way it navigates the environment, like it will actually hop down rocks.
Yeah.
Like,
it doesn't run into trees.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's very, very fluid is a term I'll use throughout talking about this game. It's a very fluid game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally agree. And the I tried like throughout the game proper, like I rode my horse to and from as much as I could, and then
because you wanted to,
because you want to. It's such a gorgeous world. It is a condensed open world. Frankly, it might even be like mostly to scale with the actual island. I don't really know though, but it really does respect the hell out of your time. Fast load times. All 49 fox dens, all 18 shrines, and everything in between can just be fast travel to. They really just empowered the player to play however they wanted to, even when it just comes to exploration, which is super cool. Okay. Let's talk about these character tales. Of the character tales that we want to talk about, I guess, because we had quite a few like specific character tales. We had Sensei Ishikawa, Lady Masako, Kenji, Yuna, Norio, and Yuriko. The major ones being Ishikawa, Masako, Yuna, and Norio. Kenji and Yuriko kind of were condensed small ones.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But which one was which like overall tale was your favorite?
Oh God, that's so hard.
I would probably say Masako, but Ishigawa is a close second.
Yeah.
See, what I love about all of these, and it's very hard to choose, like I said before, they all string out themes and link to Jin in many ways. All of these characters have some form of survivor's guilt, and they also show the impact of war on the person. This is one of the things I love about this game and its story and its world, is it's one of the most realistic. You wouldn't really think it from the outside just looking at it, but as you dig into it, it's one of the most realistic depictions of actual war, especially in this time period.
Yeah.
And you see that a lot in other just nameless side quests.
Yeah.
Like everything revolves around food, which is
Yeah.
what in this time, especially given the time of year the game takes place. In those times, in late summer and fall, you're not fighting anymore. You're getting supplies ready to endure and camp in for winter. Like, that's how war worked. It paused during winter and battle resumed in the spring. It's all about logistics.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Because there was this one side mission, and sorry, we'll get back to the main tale.
Yeah, I know.
But it's related to food, and what Jason's point is like, you think you're just helping a woman get back her food from bandits, and you think it's just a fetch quest, and then when you return the bag of rice to her, she's like, oh, I really needed this bag of rice, and he's like, I thought it was yours. She's like, no, I'm just hungry.
And people complain about no choice. You don't have to kill those bandits. You can just sneak up and steal the food.
Oh, can you?
Yeah. It doesn't, but it doesn't like give you the choice like right up front. Like it does. It's not like
it's choice by play.
Yeah, exactly. And granted, I'm not saying that there's a lot of choice in the game. Like people say, oh, these side quests suck. They're not anywhere as deep as The Witcher. Well, The Witcher is a very intimate character-focused drama that lasts 100+ hours. These side quests are just little things, but they all add up to create a world, and we'll get into that later with the setting. Anyway, back to the character side quests. I think my favorite 3 would probably have to be Yuna, Norio, and Yoriko.
Favorite 3? I said favorite.
I can't decide.
I can't do that.
Just because of, I particularly like Norio because it is an examination of just how much war can change a person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like he goes from being this shy, I want to say Norio. That's I played with. By the way, as a side note, I played with all Japanese with subtitles.
English subtitles.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of how he was always, Jin would always go Norio and walk up to him. But he goes from being this meek little. Not little, he's a big guy, but meek guy who's ashamed of himself to God. In the final mission, you don't even partake in any of the killing. You wake up to find that he's abandoned you and gone to do it himself, and he burns down it's almost like the Final Fantasy VII scene with Sephiroth, the flames in the background.
Yeah.
And he's enjoying burning these Mongols.
Yeah.
It's such a drastic character
He very much
transformation.
snaps.
Yeah.
After his brother dies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not even necessarily after his brother dies, but after seeing what they did to him.
Yeah.
Right.
Like you find him totally dismembered and just like as a totally broken man.
Yeah.
Right.
And speaking to his character development, when you first meet him, there was a fight breaking out on the monk monastery. Is it called? What I don't know the term. Sanctuary. I don't know. Whatever it is. I think monastery is fine. Jason, feel free to correct me.
I'm trying to remember as well.
I think it's monastery. Well, whatever.
It might have just been temple.
Good enough.
Temple,
it's good enough for our
temple
purposes.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah. A fight breaks out, and Norio's, the other monks are out there fighting, and they need Jen and Norio's help, and Norio's like, no, I need to protect the temple. Like there's like this is that was his purpose, and he wouldn't even fight by their side. And then eventually he came in and came to his senses, and both him and Jin protected the temple and fought the Mongols off. But then for him at the end to be all about saving his people and the people of Tsushima.
I I think Norio is probably my favorite overall character. But in terms of like the overarching quest, I think it should be noted Yuna, who's probably my second favorite. She almost has the exact opposite arc, where she starts out very hardened, very nasty and cynical, and grows more vulnerable.
Yeah.
And you see her past trauma catch up with her.
Yeah.
And then the immediate trauma of losing her brother, the one thing that she became so hardened and brutal to protect.
Yeah.
She has a fucking panic attack in that one mission, and you have to kind of go do it solo.
The mission where you have to go get the heads of the
three slavers,
yeah. Which was that, and that's another thing. This game was it was varied in a lot of ways, and it was really varied in its mission variety. And my immediate thought as like a longtime fan, my mind went straight back to like Sly Cooper. In a lot of its missions, where like there were missions where you'd have to tail someone and you'd be like going across logs above them and like following them, listening to their conversations. Just immediately shot back to a lot of missions where you do the same thing in Sly Cooper, and this game, like, it throw missions at you where you can't alert anybody and you have to find these 3 specific people and take their heads. There were missions where you just had to follow someone and listen to their conversation. Again, none of them taking too long to complete. Severe, just like extreme respect for your time, and a lot of them were really different. A lot of the even like the camps would be like completely different in how you could tackle them. They never really felt like, and no two really felt like quite the same. Maybe some of the smaller ones did, just because they're small, you can't really vary those up. But like the major Mongol camps and stuff, or even like camps that they just took over, like those were so different from one another. But yeah, that mission was that going back to Yuna, that mission in particular was really, really cool because it gave a lot of it showed Yuna as a character being very different, having growth or maybe reverse growth, giving more history behind her character, and it gave a really different type of mission for you to tackle, which was really cool.
And Yoriko, I thought, is also very important. She only has like 2 quests.
Yeah.
And it's not really much of a character arc for her as much as it is Jin reconnecting with his past.
Yeah.
But it still, and even though you don't really do much fighting in them, I still felt a surprising amount of emotion in those missions.
So,
because it's very clear this is an old woman. She used to be your handmaid, or nurse, or I'm not sure what exactly the name of the position would be.
Yeah.
But at this point, she's an old lady. She's clearly suffered a stroke and is sliding into dementia. I think she actually has a stroke during that last mission.
So, a quick question for you guys. Did you feel from those 2 missions and from how it ended and everything, did you get the impression that she did or didn't have an affair?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
She's a homewrecker.
Well, no, because it never implies that it was before she died. I mean,
it wasn't before. It was after.
Yeah, I have a feeling that definitely she had feelings.
It was right after.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was definitely like right after. Yeah.
Okay.
Baby mom dead, handmaiden, or whatever they're called.
But the
Let's
interesting
go.
thing, there's a lot of interesting, romantic relationships in this game.
Yes. Okay, I wanted to make sure that I picked up on that, and it could have been like a more familial type of love, but like it seemed like there was something there, and obviously it happened. It must have happened after Jin's mom passed away, and it makes sense that would have happened after.
Subtle, but like it wasn't made clear. But when she was trying to take a hot bath in a hot spring with Jin because she thought Jin was his own father. She was like, oh, he's like, what are we doing here? What are you trying to do? So that indicates that they did have a sexual relationship.
Yeah.
And then at the point where the mother died and she, the father like held her hand and she said, I was happy in that moment. Does that make me a bad person to be happy that she's dead? And now I'm getting this affection from him. And another thing about that mission that I really liked is you saw her dying as each mission, like as the mission
She
sprawled
clearly had
out.
a stroke at that last one because she just wanders off, which it it's a lot of people when they have a stroke, it's very common for them to lose a sense of where they are and just start walking around and
Yeah.
slowly start having like an aneurysm and
Yeah,
all kinds of other complications.
even the color of her face, like from the first mission you have with her, she's like normal colored, and then to the last mission you see she's kind of gray.
Yeah.
I thought that was done so well. I was like, this girl's gonna die, like you could tell.
Yeah, there was a ton of subtlety used with that tale, and it was really well done. I also felt really bad and really guilty for asking of her to make these dishonorable quote unquote poisons to use against the Mongols.
Yeah.
I felt that was. She even hesitated at first, but she ultimately conceded and did it because she knew that all he wanted to do was save his country, and she was willing to help him in any way.
And I feel like she also maybe had to do something like that for his father, because his father also.
Well, she thinks that he's his father like half the
Right.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another interesting thing is that it's pretty clear that even though she loved Jin's father, she also was very close with his mother to her death.
Yeah.
And in that flashback we see of the funeral procession for Jin's father, and this is another kind of world building thing. You know, we see her when she's younger leading Jin to Lord Shimura, and she's making comments about her Jin's mother, and she's saying things like, you know, the birds and the foxes, your mother believed these were her kami and they were always guarding over her, and obviously that plays into gameplay mechanics and open world mechanics, which is pretty cool. And she talks a lot about Jin's mother, so it's you know, it's I think the relationships were done very maturely in this game. And you can go over to not just this one, but then you go to Lady Misako.
Yeah.
Who is having an affair during
With
her
the maid.
relationship, but she is very quiet about it and hides it. And she still loves her husband, just not in that same way. And she always wanted to be respectful to him. And there's another side quest that isn't even a main character one, where people think this guy's really shady, and from a village he's going off during the night. They think he's betraying them to like giving information to the Mongols.
Right.
It turns out he's just going to honor the grave of a man he was in love with. But he was a married man and had a family, and he didn't want anybody to know that, you know, they were in a relationship. He didn't want to tarnish his memory.
Right.
So it's interesting how it was very subtle. You might not have picked up on a lot of it. And I just think handled very maturely, and
it definitely was. And yeah, it like there's a lot of subtlety that if you pick up on it, if you recognize it, you're kind of rewarded. Or even if you don't, you're rewarded. It's there's not I don't think there's really a bad side story in this game. They're all compelling. They're all interesting. Even just like one-off side quests, like Delaila, you brought up the one I think is most brought up, which is the woman that claimed her rice was stolen, and it turns out she just needed food.
Yeah.
Like that. And again, really short quest, doesn't take all that long to complete, but it's such an interesting story.
Hell,
even if it is like a micro story.
So many kids die in this game.
Yeah.
And it's done so tastefully. Like you don't have to see just kids being mowed down. Usually you follow some blood and you find like a dead body and you cover it up. And then you have to go, you know, obviously report the bad news. The one I'm thinking of is by the Cove. There's the guy who's trying to get his family off of the island. He makes a deal with the smugglers.
Yeah.
The smugglers kidnap his wife and child. And you just find them and they're on a rock.
You find the toy and bring it back.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the dude just breaks down.
Yeah. There is one other side mission I want to talk about, but Mark, I feel like I haven't heard like what your favorite main tale is.
Yeah.
My favorite character tale. Again, that's really tough. I did really like Yuna's, it was concise, and she's such a of all the characters that we had character tales for, she's the most I'd say important.
Yes.
To the main plot, and so to get more
It's
context
funny because she has like the shortest, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one of the shortest, and like
Her and Yurika.
Yeah, and also Kenji.
Yeah.
Kenji was only like 3 quests, I think. But like Yuna's it gave a lot of, for such an important character, we didn't know a lot about her past. So to find out that she was her and her Taka both were kind of sold into slavery. It was just like a really compelling tale, and for her to, get revenge and also meet someone from her past who kind of resents her for running away and not helping her.
Yeah.
It's just it gives her character so much more depth, and that's good considering how important of a character she is to the plot. I
feel like hers should have been a required one though, because it does add to Taka as well.
Yeah.
And Taka is a very, if there's any side character that's like really pivotal to Jin's story, it's Taka.
Which you don't even expect, because he's just her blacksmith brother. I honestly thought saving him would just give me access to my first blacksmith.
Right.
But no, he becomes such an integral character, making your ghost armor and just looking up to you so highly, and frankly sacrificing himself for the greater cause.
Which was the first time I really saw Jin show some emotion.
Yeah.
Was when Taka died.
For a character that isn't, he's not like a warrior. He's not a samurai. He's not one to really run headfirst into the action. He was one of, if not the bravest character in the entire game.
He's the embodiment of one of the main themes, and this is why I said earlier, probably the most relevant Kurosawa film to this movie, or this game, sorry, is Seven Samurai.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with Seven Samurai, the basic plot synopsis is 7 samurai hired to defend this town from a bunch of bandits. They end up also training the townsfolk, these just common peasants, to fight, and the townsfolk end up helping the samurai fend off the bandits. And kind of the final line of the movie is one of the samurai says, "This victory does not belong to us, it belongs to them." Obviously, the movie is about the power of community, the power of the common man when he's given hope.
Right.
And that theme is very much embodied in Taka.
Yes.
Yeah. First of all, the way that Taka went out was brutal. Like, that just showed how much of an asshole Khotun Khan was.
Yeah.
The way he just, like, killed him and then grabbed his head, ripped it off his body, and put it in Jin's face. That was super brutal, super sad. And also, just related to Taka and Yuna, I was curious if I read into this too much or if it was implied that obviously they were slaves, but like there was also some like sexual, like child, like molestation there.
I picked up on that a little bit too. Yeah. I think I think they tried to be subtle about it, because this game at no point like points to something and says, see what we're trying to say here.
Right,
no, they're
right.
very subtle about it, but they make it in a way so that you can pick up on it really easily. And there's a lot of, I have a lot of respect for that, but I did pick up on that a little bit too.
Okay. And then the other thing about Yuna I wanted to say, I usually don't like romance in games. It usually just feels like a boring piece of the story. And in this game, I so bad wanted Jin to like bang her, because every time he would go into the hot spring and he would say, "I haven't been touched by a woman in so long." And
he mentions her by name at one point, like maybe Yuna should join me. If you use the right reflection, yeah.
And so, like, I think, and this happens in a lot of Japanese anime where, like, romance is implied, but you'll never see the explicit, like, kissing or hugging or whatever. But I kind of, like, for the first time in a video game, really wanted that for Jin. Like, I wanted to know that he finally, like, was touched by a woman. But I do like that their romance was very subtle.
I think it's kind of implied at the end that they're living together. I don't know. Did you guys get that?
No, I don't think they were living together. I think that they were both. It was handled well, because I feel like you could either look at it either way. It's either it is romantic or it isn't romantic. But one thing that can't be denied is
romantic.
I mean, one thing that just can't be that can't be understated is just the friendship the two of them had, the bond that the two of them have, no matter whether or not they're romantic or not. It's there and it's strong.
Yeah.
I
definitely agree. It doesn't need to be romantic for the story to work. It's just,
again, it all comes back to what I've been saying: subtlety.
Yep.
yeah.
Even with their ending with Jin coming back from killing the Khan and just slinging him slinging him around her shoulders to help carry him back, like, it didn't matter if there was romance or not. You could take it either way, but the subtlety of it I respect a lot, because it wasn't in your face. You could take it either way, and it doesn't really matter. Maybe it'll matter or be a more important plot point in the sequel, which we'll talk about later.
The only time it was a little obvious is when Yuna brought in that bow guy to help them fight the last mission, and he was like, "Oh, he seems to really care about you, huh?" And she was like, "Oh, that was the past."
Yeah.
Like, I forgot that guy's name.
I'm not sure.
You're talking about the hunter, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
there's definitely a little bit of tension of like jealousy there. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That was fun.
But yeah, I really liked Yuna's side story. I really liked Kenji.
I do too.
He was
ride or die.
He was such a goofball, and I honestly was a little worried that he was at some point going to betray you in some way, but no, he was very much like, at first, fending for himself.
Facilitates your fucking escape.
Yeah.
At like the lowest point.
And he does. And he seemed like he was very much out for himself, but especially after the death of Taka, he's like, no, I'm all in. Like, he was like, you know, he was like my best friend, and they killed him. No, I'm all in. I'm helping you no matter how. I can't do much, but whatever I can do, I will do it for you.
With Kenji, I liked Kenji. I've seen criticisms of the game as a whole that it takes itself a bit too seriously. And it was funny because, again, I keep bringing it up, watching Yojimbo the other night. Yojimbo actually is in many ways a comedy of errors. Not in the sense that the main character is very clever and witty. He's playing two gangs off of each other. And it's just funny watching these gangs be so stupid and so manipulated by this wandering Ronin and basically end up destroying each other. And then final sword fight, he takes care of. But there was a lot of levity. The movie, I was laughing out loud at points. At the just 1960s slapstick comedy. Mm-hmm. But it made me think for a little while, maybe there is something to that especially more early on in the game, more levity would have helped it be a bit faster, considering how slow. Mark and I talked about this while we were playing, how much, not too much, but the opening act definitely feels a little bit slower than the rest of the game.
Yeah, to the point where I was concerned for a bit that, like, nothing really much was going to happen. I became concerned about the spoiler cast, thinking like, well, not really much is going to happen in the story. It seems that, what are we going to talk about? And after the first act, like, it all just explodes from there.
It's definitely a roller coaster type plot where you got that slow, not too slow, but like a slower drag for the buildup, and then the second act, even though there's technically more you have to do, goes very fast.
Yes.
Yeah, the first act was just to introduce you to the open world mechanics and get you used to combat.
The third act is just punch after punch after punch.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And that's why, and also, the reason I kind of came to the conclusion that I think they just hit a good spot with the amount of levity with just this Kenji character was that ultimately the world they were creating, as we've kind of talked about a couple times, it's a very bleak and tragic world plagued by war, and I think maybe a little more comedy might have ruined that tone.
Yeah, and
I think they hit it just on the head with what they needed.
Agreed. And as it relates to Kenji, like, he didn't have many quests that were part of his tale, but they were always like, yo, you should go take out those Mongols. They have all these resources that they stole from towns. and then you go kill them all, and Kenji shows up. He's like, "Oh, cool! I can give these back to somebody or whatever."
Yeah.
Like it was very much like he would swindle you into doing the right thing for a different reason than he tells you, but that thing that reason is still noble. It's just
Yes.
he figured you'd be less likely to do it if he told you the truth. And
He's devious and incompetent, but at the same time, he's always trying to do the right thing.
like he's like chaotic good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if on like an alignment chart, he's like chaotic good.
Yeah,
I really
yeah.
love that about him. He didn't have many quests, but they were all enjoyable because of his character alone.
Yeah.
I think I'll just end it. I think of the character tales, I feel like the one that had the weakest ending was Lady Masako's. Her like the quest line itself had a lot of memorable moments, a lot of interesting moments. We talked about the E3 demo shown was actually part of her tale. It's ostensibly a side quest, but that was so memorable.
That was like the high point of it. It was like midway through.
Yeah, you save this monk, and she's like ready to kill him because she is convinced he played a part in the murder of her clan, and you wind up fighting her thinking that the Mongols have already won, and her just kind of giving up. And after you defeat her, but obviously don't kill her, Mongols swarm you, and you fight together again. Jin flat out tells her, like, don't ever try to kill me again.
Yeah.
And like they're fine again after that. It says a lot about their characters and the maturity of them. But the ending boiling down to raiding and attacking her sister, I don't know. It wasn't bad, but I think of all the primary character tales we got, it was definitely the weakest in terms of an ending.
Well, I think it was implied that her sister had killed her clan, like the kids and everything.
Yeah, her sister had a grudge.
It was out.
Yeah,
it was
her
outright. Yeah, it wasn't implied. It was outright stated, basically.
Yeah, and in the end, like you thought, like her sister had a grudge, and like to think that for the reason. There was no good reason why she could have killed children, let alone their whole clan. But then you find out later that she was pretty much like abused, by the person that Lady Masako had her stay with.
And she blamed her for that entirely.
Yeah.
I think, Mark, the reason you say it had the weakest ending is because unlike any of the other characters, well, not unlike any of the other ones, but of like the big characters like Ishikawa, Masako, Yuna, and Norio.
Yeah.
She's the only one with a flat character arc.
Yes.
So basically, she starts one way, and she's tempted to devolve into just this brutal murderer out of vengeance. But at the end, she comes back to her senses. Unlike Ishikawa, Norio, and Yuna, who all have transformations.
Yes, I think that you hit the nail on the head. I think that is why, and like again, Masako's story super interesting. Totally
has great moments.
Yeah, it still ended strong. It was of the ones that we got, it was the weakest. I really liked Sensei Ishikawa's ending with Tomoe escaping and leaving the note, leaving the bow, and leaving her life behind essentially. It gave both of them closure. And just lots of in general, like there were just lots of strong character moments in this game that you could easily miss.
And what made it extra good is you always didn't know who was going to turn their back on you the whole time.
Exactly. I did call it from a mile away during the Sensei Ishikawa storyline that the woman you were helping with the traps and everything, I knew immediately like, oh, this is Tomoe.
Well,
and
it's interesting because at first I was like, this is so lame. Like, it's obvious that it's her.
And you
but
thought
I felt like they specifically did that to create dramatic irony.
Yes.
Because we're supposed to think that Jin doesn't know, but it turns out that
he knew all along.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which like it was really well done. It was really cool. I think we can talk about just the other characters before we move on to the last bits of conversation. The main character that I want to bring up that we have not talked about once yet, Ryuzo.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird how we haven't talked about Ryuzo yet. He was actually in the whole first act. He was my favorite character.
Yeah, I like Ryuzo.
Which made his betrayal sting the most, because in that first act we talk about how slow the build-up was and how I was kind of worried about the story. Once Jin and Ryuzo met up and started like their banter, their discussion of their history together, it was definitely a turning point for like a lot of that story. It just seemed kind of flat and didn't seem like it was going anywhere. Their banter did give that levity a little bit.
Yeah.
And it gave me we immediately picked up on the history, their duel, and just like the weird friendly tension between the two of them.
They're frenemies.
Yeah.
Rivals.
Yes. Yeah. And
it's almost like in Yakuza. What's his name? I already forgot his name.
Nishiki?
Nishiki, yes.
Nishikiyama, yeah.
Yeah, he was my favorite character, and it made his betrayal during the last mission of Act 1 all the more sting all the more.
It was well executed, yeah.
Yeah, and then and you know, he wasn't just like he
wasn't just a sellout.
Yeah, he was looking out for his men. He had a clear reason for doing it, and it's not even that he was happy about it. Like, Koten Khan was forcing him to light his own people on fire, and he struggled with that. And that was a super powerful cutscene of him shouting for them to open the gate, because he didn't want to have to murder another one of his countrymen. And especially in that way, setting him on fire alive. Like,
that was a really powerful scene, for sure. Even when you face Ryuzo again, when you're taking over the Mongol army in the third act, I think, or the end of the second act. I think it's the end of the
second act, yeah.
Yeah.
Before you poison everyone.
Yeah, Ryuzo kind of comes to his senses and wants to join you in fighting the Mongols. But I think at that point, Jin just doesn't trust him and feels like he's already done too much damage and should kind of like just step away from the whole situation, period.
Yeah. I think he was just afraid of dying.
Yeah.
And he's just trying to appeal to Jin's the memory of their friendship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly almost wish we got some sort of flashback or at least more info on their history, but we kind of get some of that even when we meet up with Yoriko, because she brings up like them playing as kids, I think.
Yeah.
And gives a little more history. He was a really good character. I really liked him. I liked him as a character. Obviously, he wasn't necessarily a good person, but I liked him as a character and thought he was a really powerful inclusion that shouldn't be ignored.
Yes.
He also serves as a good like checkpoint along Jin's path of like, at that point in the story, he hasn't fully embraced this growing story of the ghost. That's something more that Yuna is pushing.
Yeah.
But it does serve as like a metaphorical point in the plot where Jin is kind of symbolically skewing his past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we want to bring up in terms of story? I mean, like, things can unfold as we go. I just want to make sure there's nothing else that you guys urgently want to talk about before we move on to things like combat and the open world itself.
I just think it should be mentioned, even though in the beginning we said Khotun Khan he's kind of a pretty straightforward character. He's looking for a legacy, for a story. He wants to be remembered. And that's kind of, he tries to equate himself to Jin, and he does so when he interrogates him, where he talks about, you know, how he'll do anything for victory and all this stuff. But while there isn't necessarily much depth to Khotun Khan, I think the way they presented him gave him a lot of breadth. Like he was I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. He was a memorable villain without really being in depth, I guess is all I can say. Like,
yeah,
like just the way he approaches every situation. When Taka, when Taka takes the sword, instead of killing Jin, as Kochin Kan says, kill him and I'll let you free. Obviously, Taka tries to kill the Khan.
Mm-hmm.
The Khan, he doesn't just kill him. He kicks Taka to the ground, snaps his arm, and then cuts his head off and holds it in front of Jin and says, I'll go find another one of your friends and we'll have to do this all over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that is a fucking villain. Like, if you're going to do a pretty straightforward villain, that's how you do it.
Yeah. For
well,
sure.
what makes him also memorable is he's giving people options to like join him so
Yes.
that his reign could be more powerful. So like he gives really alluring reasons why they should join him, including Lord Shimura, including Jin, and Ryuzo, who actually fell for it in a sense. And that's what made him so memorable without actually knowing too much of his motivations besides him trying to have power and take over the land of Tsushima.
And that goes again to like the whole, everything ties back into the whole world of the game, because remember, Tsushima is just a stepping stone for him and the Mongols.
Yeah.
And actually, if you dig into the records, like that little collectibles that you find, like it talks about the politics within the Mongol Empire itself.
Yep.
Khotun, I'm sorry, and Kublai Khan at the time. I think it's Kublai. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kublai Khan and Khotun Khan there's some inner strife there, and Khotun Khan is looking to use Tsushima as a launching pad against mainland Japan, and then hoping to use all of those resources back against his internal enemies. So there are dynamics going on there too as well that are kind of accentuated by like, hey, fuck it, like you can just join me. Like, we don't have to do this. You can just fight for me.
And he does get that from Ryuzo and the Ronin. Under Ryuzo, the Straw Hats, they do wind up fighting for him because it results in them being fed. So, like he is a memorable villain for those reasons, for sure. Go ahead, Delaila.
There was just two more things I wanted to say before we move on away from the story. The crying was really bad in this game. That's my one criticism. Like when Yuna was crying over Taka's death, I was really moved, but then the crying looked so fake that it kind of took, like, I just laughed. I was like, oh my God. I don't know if you guys felt the same way about the facial expressions period.
In the ending, when Lord Shimura is crying, I thought that was well done. But I see what you're saying overall.
Lord Shimura looked good, but Yuna, for some reason, looked a little pasty.
He wasn't breaking down. He was like, he was crying while maintaining like a stoic look.
Right. Yeah. That was effective. Yeah. But the Yuna crying over Taka was.
I think a lot of it, again, has to do with we just came off of playing a game where so much money and time was invested in the mocap and the facial animations.
Yeah, a lot of those intricate details.
Yeah. And this game wasn't really the focus of this game.
Yeah. But it didn't change from feeling the emotion. And then so the other thing actually two things I wanted to say about this. There's three altogether. I'm so sorry.
No,
I'll be quick. There was one side mission called The Whisper in the Woods. It was in the Yagata Island. And you're basically like in this really dark forest and it's heavy fog. And they have like this really like eerie music and cryptic notes that's like kind of horror-esque, and it makes you feel like that they're gonna get into the mythical aspects of Japan, like yokai or shinigami, which is just like ghosts or death gods or something like that. I thought that they were gonna go that direction.
There's a lot of Shinto and kami references,
but then it turns out that it was just like bandits like trying to inflict fear and make it seem like something supernatural, but it wasn't, which I really appreciate that they didn't go into that realm, because a lot of Japanese even Sekiro went into like the supernatural aspects of Japan and kind of like mythical.
I'm really happy you brought that up, because it's something I do kind of want to bring up real quick about Jin's character. He's a very spiritual person, but he's in no way superstitious.
Yeah.
He does believe in the kami, obviously, and he follows the influence of his mother and the foxes and everything, and the honored shrines regularly, Shinto shrines, the Inari shrines. He is a very spiritual person, but if someone brings up, oh, I fucking saw a ghost in the woods, he's like, no, you didn't.
Yeah.
Like, they don't exist, you fucking idiot. Like, stop. And
Yeah.
he goes and disproves them constantly. Like it's a really cool aspect of his character where he is very spiritual, but he also recognizes
Yeah,
the reality
I
of
love his reactions to Yamato every time like he brings up a new mystic quest. It's like I'm
yes.
being hunted by a demon. It's like, yeah, no, you're being hunted by Mongols.
Yeah. Delilah, what was the other thing you wanted to bring
The
up?
last thing is we didn't talk about the horse.
Thank you. That I thought of it while Jason was talking. It was like, shit, there is one more thing we got to talk about in the story. We didn't talk about the
I don't. It's
horse.
because I don't want to talk about. I don't want to talk. I don't want to think about Nobu.
So
You're okay. Oh, so yours was named Nobu.
So,
I had
yeah.
Kage.
So, okay, so wait. What color horse did you guys pick too?
White.
So
I picked
you
the
had
gold
white
one
Nobu,
with the
deluxe
sorry.
edition,
the deluxe edition, yeah.
and he
Only because I paid for it.
and he was
I wanted
Kage?
the black one. Kage. Yeah.
Oh, see, I didn't get the black one until later. I don't. Was there an option for black in the beginning? I don't remember.
There was black, brown, white, and if you had the deluxe edition, the gold horse.
Yeah.
I didn't pick the gold one at all. Like for either horse, I thought it was like I don't want to be forced to pick that one because I paid for it, and I also just like didn't like it that much to begin with. Like my first horse was white, and I named him Sora. Not because of Kingdom Hearts, Jason.
I knew you would. When I saw the option, I was like, "Yup, he's gonna do it."
It wasn't because of Kingdom Hearts. It was because I liked the white horse most, and from the names given, I felt Sora, meaning sky, was the most fitting.
Yeah.
So I chose that, and at the end,
I like Trust because he's my trusty companion.
At the end, I chose like the grayish horse, and named him Kage.
Yeah.
What was your guys' second?
I named mine Kage, and I chose the black one. Yeah.
Okay.
I named my second horse Sora, and I was gonna name it Kaze, which was the option you didn't get in the beginning, which is wind. But they give you that option so that you can have something that you can't pick the same name as your first horse, which makes sense.
It would dishonor
but you could
his
pick
memory.
the same horse, which was weird. I did not like that. But yeah, I named him Sora the second time.
Okay.
Yeah, I picked a white horse in the beginning because as soon as they gave you that choice, I'm like, I feel something ominous coming. And if you've seen the Never-Ending Story, obviously the white horse Treyu, he sinks in the swamp.
Aw.
And
See, it was. I feel like it was nice choosing the white horse because I realized as I played through playing through the game, I think there was only one primary character that also had a white horse. Pretty much everybody not many characters had white horses, so I felt kind of unique in my choice of having a white horse. The only other character I recognized had a white horse, I believe, was Yuriko. So I felt kind of special in my choice, which was cool, and then it made it all the more damaging when and it wasn't even Mongols. It was the Shogun and his army.
Yeah.
Shooting down your horse as you're escaping from imprisonment.
Hell, and that horse carries you a good ways before it finally dies.
Probably the most emotional I got during this game.
Yeah, it's the only scene I cried like a bitch at.
And they make that, not only do you bury your horse, they make it a place you can fast travel to.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's like I think it's like grave of a loyal friend or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of I forget the exact name of the fast travel point, but yeah, like
that sounds
hands down the most emotionally impacted I was during this game.
And the music too that played during that scene.
Yeah.
Made it, and the music is so good in this game.
That was probably my favorite environment in the entire game. That area it looks like that scene in Mulan after the Huns have come through and destroyed that village.
Yeah.
That's literally what it is. The Mongols have come through. The entire area is burned. It's just
the endless
dust
forest.
But is that the place you were talking about earlier?
Yeah.
It's even though it's not nearly as colorful or anything as the rest of the game, it was my favorite just because of the emotions, just the scenery alone, but everything else in tandem.
Like I said earlier, it's beauty and destruction. It really is something special. Like just how much how much the art direction really assisted this game in its presentation and in its just general setting.
And it heightens the story.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, it was the most emotionally impacted I was throughout the entire game. And that's not to say this had a shortage of emotionally impactful moments. There were plenty. Like we talked about Ryuzo crying out to open the gate. We talked about Taka's death, which also they give this a trophy at Taka's grave, playing the
Song of Storm.
Yeah, for lack of remembering the name, we'll just go with the name of it as it is in Zelda, the Song of Storms. Which was they trophyified it, but it was still a neat thing that they kind of honored in some way.
Yeah, and if you bow at his grave, which I did, a bunch of butterflies fly around you.
Yeah, which was cool that they had those a lot. I told you guys about it in Slack. The first one that I found, there's that one frog shrine, the frog Shinto shrine, and I saw the little signpost next to a bunch of statues of frogs to bow. So I did. And then like hundreds of frogs just jump out, and I was like laughing my ass off.
There's also a dragonfly one where like a swarm. I did it. The swarm of dragonflies will come around.
There were a lot of them. The dragonflies, the fish would jump in the water. The ones where you bowed and a bird would come and perch on the statue or whatever. None of them came even close to the frogs though. The frogs was hilarious.
Totally.
Especially finding that not through like a guide, but just seeing that and organically doing it without knowing it's going to do something.
Yeah, because it was at a shrine.
Yeah. It was so cool.
Very cool.
So yeah, like if more story beats pop in, like we can talk about them, but I think let's jump into like the combat a little bit.
Yeah.
I already kind of stated that I kind of role played throughout the game, like starting off more as a samurai and ending as a mix of both, mostly doing Ghost because that's kind of what Jin was embracing at the time. So I started embracing it more and more. Did you guys by the end? I guess you guys were using lots of Ghost mechanics, even early on. How did we feel
about it? It was always
about
a mix.
This
game very much I approached it like a Batman game, because I very much felt like that's what they were going for with this game. Was this is fucking samurai Batman, and that's not to say that I relied exclusively on like stealth and ghost weapons, because that's not at all how I approached it. Like I would use those as needed. I might walk up to a battlefield, hop down, do a chain assassination to thin out the herd, then engage in just the straight up combat, which I loved. I loved engaging in the sword play as much as possible simply because of how fun I found it. Yeah. But I would also intersperse, smoke bombs. I loved the bow. This is probably my favorite bow in almost any game. I don't know why, it just gelled with me very easily. I felt like it was very easy to control, and I was able to pull off exactly what I needed to do very quickly.
My only
again, fast and fluid is how I would frame the game.
My only complaint about using the bow was that it was also like aiming with the bow was also tied to switching to like throwable things, and sometimes that's hard to, or it's hard to do when the action doesn't slow down because it just recognizes that you're aiming, and if you want to switch from something to another thing, you have to be really quick about it and know exactly what it is you want to do and what you need to do.
A lot of weapon wheels in this game. There's a lot of options and freedom, which I think is one of the biggest strengths of the game, is that you can go at it however you want. You can have your fun, but it takes up a lot of real estate on the controller.
And I'm okay with that, because if we in my comparison to Horizon Zero Dawn, and even we can go back and have a complaint that I had with Final Fantasy 15. A major complaint I had with both of those games was if you want to switch up your arsenal, you have to stop everything and go into a pause menu and re-equip like different weapons. And this game gets rid of that. It's not a thing in this game whatsoever. Everything is available to you just purely while you're in the action. And it's a little difficult, and you have to be very, very quick about it when you want to switch to something, but at least I don't have to go into a fucking menu to do it. And I love
No, I
it.
agree.
The only thing you had to go in the menu for was for the armor, which kind of bothered me a little bit. I wish there was like a quick button to change your armor pieces, because like when I'm traveling the world, I like to use the traveler's armor, because when you're by a collectible it vibrates. And then when I was going to stand off with the enemy, I wanted to put on the Sakai clan armor to get the extra like one hit kills. I think you could get up to 5 with the Sakai clan armor if it's fully upgraded, and then switch to the ghost armor so that I can get the ghost attack built up quicker than I would wearing other armor.
In terms of gear, I roleplayed that too. Basically, up until I got the Sakai clan armor.
Yeah.
And bear in mind, I was doing all the mythic quests as well, which we didn't really talk about. We can circle back to those. I
did them all as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I did them all as I went, but up until I got the Sakai clan armor, I only exclusively used traveler's gear. Mm-hmm. Because I just loved the way he looked in it.
Yeah, and that was the coolest looking.
It was so cool. I had like the red dye on, and it just looked like he was a traveling samurai. Once I got the patchwork straw hat, I put that on. I didn't wear a mask. Like, there were so many masks in this game, and headbands and headgears and whatever, and I ignored all of them in favor of having no mask and the patchwork straw hat on with the traveler's gear, because I just loved the look of it. It was so cool, like going up, if you go up to like, you know, fight the Ronin that you can duel in the latter half of the game, or even the mythic quest. It's just like so cool seeing this person decked out in like armor or whatever, and you're just there in like your regular garb with your cape flowing in the wind and your straw hat. You just seemed like so badass to me to have Jin like that. And then like once I got the Sakai clan armor, I put that on because I felt like that was the time and the place for that. And then when the ghost armor got introduced, that was the time and place to wear that.
Right.
And I just
one of the mistakes I feel the game does make is that, so in terms of this game is very, very, very light on its RPG elements. Most of its RPG elements really have very little impact. It's very mechanics heavy, is what I'm trying to say. The game is very focused on the combat system. Aside from increasing your resolve meter and your health meter, the charms, most of them don't do that. Like, you can take them out and you won't notice a difference. There are very few abilities earned through charms and gear that have, like you were stating before, Delaila, the additional kills on the what do you call it? The standoff.
The ghost. Yeah.
And then the ghost meter, increasing it faster. Those, and being able to find things in the open world through the vibration on the controller. Those are out of like maybe less than 10 concrete things that you can get on like your gear and your charms. And I feel like it was a mistake tying those things to specific pieces of gear, because I felt like a lot of people were torn between the cosmetic look of the character and the abilities associated thereon. Like, I was like you guys, I was almost always using the traveler's armor for most of the game, just because I wanted to be able to get all my collectibles and whatnot. And also because I like the look of it.
See, I didn't even care about the collectibles until really late, because I just like, I knew I'd get to them eventually, and I knew especially with the wind upgrades that you can get, like, it wouldn't be particularly hard to find them.
Yeah.
But I just loved the look of it. The look of that armor was like the coolest look to me.
Yeah, that
oh, sorry, go.
No, I was just gonna say, and the thing about the armor that's really cool is as you upgraded it, it looks different with each upgrade, like aesthetically, and then you could change the dyes at any time, which, like,
and you can go
let's
back.
Be real, black dye, let's go, like, all day. Although I did put the white on to like have the blood effect on my cape and take a few screenshots,
okay.
But
and you get that one headband, the headband of death. It's just the white one, but it's got blood splattered all over it.
Yeah.
And the red kanji, but yeah. But I guess what I was just trying to say before, I feel like gear obviously should have had stats, which they do as you upgrade them, but I think they do. I don't remember. I feel like there should have been they should have just taken those concrete things and made those the charms and had the gear be just
Yeah, I like
a
that.
little more stat based, and you upgrade them and that's it. There's no like special abilities tied to them so
Totally
that they're
agree.
more cosmetic.
I
Yeah.
think what could have been like you unlocking that piece of gear unlocks those upgrades, and the upgrades can be moved between pieces of gear. Yeah, like if you
Yeah,
upgrade
like
your yeah
transmog, and like yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, and like if you upgrade your traveler's gear, the upgrades that come with it get upgraded with it, but you don't have you're those aren't locked to when you're using traveler's gear. They just upgrade when you upgrade that gear specifically.
Right.
That I would have liked that too, because it would have made more use out of the things I was unlocking with the gear. Because as cool as like the Gosaku armor was, like from the Mythic Tale,
Yeah.
like I liked the look of the Travelers so much that that's all I wanted to use because of how it looked, not even because of its abilities. And like some of those abilities I never wound up experiencing. Some of those benefits I never wound up experiencing because I just never equipped it.
I love the archer one, especially because of how much I use the bow, and it does give you a significant boost in concentration time.
Yeah.
Um,
Had the
if you're using the bow a lot, I think what they were trying to go for is that they wanted to give you abilities that don't change the core of the combat all that much, but they do accentuate certain play styles.
Yeah.
Just a tiny bit to give you a little bit of a boost in whatever you're leaning towards. I felt like it would have been better just to get rid of most of the charms are useless.
Yeah, and
I
they
took them on and
overload
off,
you with so many.
yeah, most of them are useless. Even some of the golden charms that you get from the shrines don't do anything really.
They're
Yeah,
so specific. Like some of them are like using like a black powder bomb can also like poison them or something. I don't remember specifics. But a lot of them are so specific. Yeah. That's right.
But honestly, that's fine, because I actually prefer the fact that this game is so light on its RPG elements, because I like how involved the combat system is, and your true progression, and I think that was their intent throughout the game. The true progression is the skill tree and how combat changes throughout the game. So like you start the game and take, for example, spearmen will have that red attack that you can't block, you can only dodge it, but then you get the ability to
Parry it.
Then you get the ability you can unlock to perfect parry it, in which case you can immediately counterattack. And then by the end of the game, you fully unlock the ability that as you're attacking a spearman, if they attack you, you automatically parry it. So it's that progression that's ultimately more important than any gear. So I feel like they should have just...
Yeah, I agree. I tried to mix and match charms just to play around and see how effective it was. Like there was one Mongol camp that I just wanted to go full stealth on, and I put every single stealth charm that I possibly could. And the stealth is so easy in this game, and the AI are so dumb that you didn't really need all of that. But I was just like, I could literally be right next to a Mongol and they didn't notice me.
Yeah.
That's like all it really did. But the only charm that I found really effective was increasing it's easier to perform parries.
Yes.
Because coming from playing Sekiro, where like the timing of the parries was very specific, this game was a little different. The timing was a little different, so I had to like make some adjustments. But putting that charm on made it feel more like Sekiro in terms of the parry.
I always had that one equipped as well.
Yeah. And
that's what I mean. Like that's the kind of charm that they should have been focused on, like a charm that take the ability that increases concentration time from the archer set, make that a charm.
Yeah.
Rumbling, where you find stuff in the environment.
If you could assign charms to armor.
Right.
Like specific armor pieces. That would be
Take
dope.
those abilities, take them off of the armor, make them to the charms, get rid of all the other bullshit charms.
Yeah.
And then you can just put the charms in wherever.
Like if anything, when you unlock gear, it comes equipped with those charms and that represent those abilities, and then you can unequip them and equip them as you wish. And I totally agree with that. I wish that was the case, and that there were less. Honestly, get rid of all the minor charms. Just give me major charms and give me a lot less of them. And I would have been a lot happier with that system. It also would have helped if the menus had more of an organizational structure. Like I wish that by the end of the game, like, I ran out of things to do. I did everything. I went and found every piece of vanity gear. I didn't have to do any of that. I wanted to because I was having so much fun with the game. And it became a huge problem with the vanity gear in particular. I go to like find a specific headband, and I have this giant list of like 100 headbands, and I'm scrolling through trying to find the right one. And like it's not even just headbands, but there's like helmets, and there's all these different
straw
types.
hats. Yeah,
straw hats. It would have been so nice to have like you go to equip headgear, and then it's like, okay, do you want a headband? Do you want a straw hat, or do you want a helmet?
Yeah.
And then I go in there and I select from there. It would have been so nice to have like some sort of organizational structure deeper than just a massive list, because it was so exhausting trying to find like.
See, I wasn't playing around with it like that. I felt like it was really fast being able to just switch my main armor piece, and I never really, even when I got into combat, I never really switched that off. The only time I switched out of the Traveler's attire was like for missions. I would choose the specific like samurai armor that I wanted.
For armor, it's different because there's only so many sets of armor. But like I'm just talking like there were a couple Easter eggs with the headbands. You get to a point where you can climb the pagodas.
Yeah, there's
every
an infamous
pagoda.
one.
Yeah, every pagoda has a headband at the top. One of them has the infamous Second Son headband reference.
It's like the bottom of his beanie.
Yeah, and I once I saw that, I was like, first of all, I didn't realize the pagodas had something until I eventually realized I could climb them, and that's because the fucking bird.
You need the claw. You need the hook.
Yeah, the bird kept like I would follow the birds anytime I saw them. The birds would lead you to like secrets and stuff, and every time he'd take me to a pagoda, I was like, I don't know what you're trying to fucking tell me. Yeah. What are you trying to tell me? And then I realized
the birds, but I hate the birds because they shouldn't have been telling you that before you could actually access those secrets.
Yeah, which is driving me crazy.
Yeah.
But eventually I realized I could climb a pagoda, and the first one that I climbed, it was the infamous headband, and I was like, oh shit, that's so cool. And now I know that pagodas have things on top of them. And then the next one I found was the Sly Cooper one. So as a longtime Sucker Punch fan, I was geeking out over that.
Yeah. And if you put that on, and then there's like a certain weapon that looks like Sly's tail.
Yeah.
And then this putting a blue dye on the Sakai clan armor, you get a trophy.
I think it was the Gosaku armor. It was one of the armors.
Yeah, and you get a trophy for that. Even if you equip a certain number of dyes, you get a trophy called Slay, which I thought was funny. But yeah, the only going back to the combat, the only upgrades like Jason mentioned that were really effective were like for the wind and the stone and the moon stances, and those stances made the combat feel like a freaking dance. Like it was so enjoyable to switch depending on what type of enemy you were fighting against.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, if I could choose to just fight them head on, I would. But then when things got a little more challenging towards like Act 2 and Act 3, I would use more ghost weapons to kind of bring down their stagger meter, or like
a
take
smoke
out a
bomb
few
to
enemies.
break it up if they all get into close. Yeah, that's how I played. I mostly fought like that's why I said I felt very much it was a Batman game, because it's like a lot of people in reviews and stuff, I heard them saying, talking about the stealth. Oh, the stealth, this is supposed to be a stealth game and it sucks. I'm like, I mean, yeah, I guess you could call it a stealth game, but you're really just supposed to be using those options to kill as many people as quickly as you can to thin the herd. Like, this isn't like fucking Metal Gear Solid. I mean, I guess you could go through the game without being detected, and there are missions where you have to do that. Yeah. But they're few and far. There are very few of them.
It
purposefully so.
It goes back to giving that player the choice through gameplay. Like they really did empower the player to play however they want, whether it's if it's go head in or be stealthy.
It's about, like, from a story perspective, it's about inflicting fear upon the enemy.
Yes. Oh man, and unlocking Ghost stance was like the most badass moment in the entire story.
Yes.
Hell yeah. And maybe in gaming.
Yeah, like you just unlock it mid mission and you're driving them out of the town, and just slaughtering them. It turns black and white and red every time you slaughter someone. It's
just the first time you cut off the head of one of the
The main
Mongol
henchman.
generals.
Yes.
I love that scene where Lord Shimura walks up behind you and you like just cut off the head of one of them.
Yeah.
It's a cutscene and you're like just holding it up as all the Mongols run away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, like so badass. And I like by the end, I really liked the Sakai clan armor, not the Sakai, the Ghost armor, because I really liked Ghost Dance, and
Yeah.
it decreased the amount of kills you needed, which was
Yeah.
which was great because especially against the Ronin, I had so much trouble not getting hit by them and like recognizing their attack patterns. They were like the most difficult for me to nail down. And I would get to a point where I would need one more kill and I'd get hit. And I was like, God damn it.
The interesting thing about the Ronin, they'll use like standoff tactics and duel tactics in normal combat.
Yes.
So they'll fake you out in normal combat. And I love that so much. I think what could have easily become a very monotonous selection of enemies, they did a really good job with what they had in creating good enemy diversity.
Yes.
To keep combat interesting.
I would say I have two minor complaints, I'd say, about like the primary combat. The first being, I wish unlocking the stances took a little longer. I felt like I felt like, you know, going and bouncing leader and unlocking the first stance happened really quick, or the second stance the first stance you unlock like happens really quick because you don't need that many leaders, and they do increase it. But like I felt like maybe this is just because I was going around doing everything, but the fact that I had all 4 stances like so early in the game, it felt like the progression kind of capped, like the big point of progression kind of capped really early on.
Yeah. That's true.
I felt like I didn't even get to observe that many leaders. That was a mechanic for increasing and unlocking stances faster, but I didn't get to do that more than I think 3 times because I had by the time I unlocked all the stances, like it was still really early in the game, and I hadn't really utilized that very much, and I'd already killed so many leaders that it just kind of became a moot point.
I didn't even think about that, and it is an interesting criticism. I think it's a catch-22 though, because like you, I'd pretty much I didn't get the entire trees of all of them, but I had unlocked all of them and was starting to work down on each of the stances by the end of Act 1. Probably same as you.
Yeah.
It's a catch-22 because there is, in terms of enemy variety and their strength, there's a pretty decent jump between Act 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
Especially given that the Ronin are thrown in.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't really not... I guess you can, but like you're really increasing the difficulty spike if the player doesn't have them all.
Yeah.
Agreed. It is a catch-22, and I'm not sure how I would have them do it differently. I guess I have 3 minor complaints. There's another one I thought of in the middle of you talking about that. The next one I'll bring up is I feel like the enemy variety, like while there was lots of variety and in how they attacked, enemies overall leaned very heavily towards swords, and I felt like I was mostly using my sword stance throughout the entire game. And while like they would switch up like how they were attacking and their style of attacking, I was mostly in that stance, and I felt like maybe there should have been more like enemies using lances like in different ways, or shields in different ways. We did get some variety with the brutes, but like I just always felt like my default would just switch back to sword stance because there were so many sword enemies, and I felt like there was more of a use for the other stances.
Yeah, I think that's because the Straw Hats all had swords.
Right.
Yeah.
But not even just the Straw Hats, because there were other Mongols that like some of them would have 2 swords. One of them would have like a very specific way with like a scimitar, almost, and like then you add in the Ronin, and it's just so many different enemies that use swords. And like that leads me to my 3rd minor complaint, which is like I wish the duels had a lot more variation. Most of the duels again were sword enemies, and if they weren't, they had a shield, and that was the majority of the duels. And a lot of them kind of boiled down to, as badass as those moments were, they were so cool. One of the highlights of the combat for me, but like they mostly had like the same attack strategies and the same movesets. Mm-hmm. And I feel like those are like your boss encounters, so to speak. I feel like most of them shouldn't feel the same, but a lot of them kind of did, and that was a little disappointing.
Yeah. The only thing that was different were the environments, which were also really cool, which we'll get into. Yeah, just to cap off the combat, like I felt like it was a nice little mashup between like Assassin's Creed, Batman, Shadow of War, which is kind of like Assassin's Creed and Batman, and Sekiro. But what makes it unique is that you can choose how you want to approach each fight and just the game period. So you can make it feel like just stealth. You can make it feel like, well, not 100%, because certain missions do require only stealth or do require standoffs. But for the most part, like for the overall game, you can choose how you want the game to feel. And I liked mixing and matching it, which didn't make it, like, I won't say, oh, this is just an Assassin's Creed game, or, you know, it was all of it. It took the best elements of those games, brought them together, and made a really fun combat experience that really fed to player style.
Yeah. And I liked the way that health regeneration and special moves are all tied to that resolve meter, which is which is just totally dependent upon you fucking going out and engaging. Like there's no hiding, I mean, yes, there's technically a charm that lets you regen health, but it's out of combat.
Yeah.
So if you're in the middle of a mission, like, or in the middle of a duel and you have no resolve and no health, you gotta fucking go do some damage to get resolved in order to heal, or you're gonna.
Yep. And
go ahead.
And the abilities that you unlock from the Mythic Quest, which I guess we could get into now real quick, are really freaking dope. Like, you can't just spam them because they're tied to the resolve. Like the Heavenly Strike, which I loved. It's just a one-hit kill. It's an unblockable attack. And then you get that dance. It was called Dance something something, where you can one-hit kill 3 enemies, which was really helpful to build the ghost meter. And
the Dance of Wrath.
Dance of Wrath, yeah. But that would take like 3 resolve points, so you had to like be careful on how you use them. That was great for boss
encounters. Yeah,
because
it automatically breaks their
stagger meter.
Yeah, like and they were just like, of the side tales, they were the most interesting, because we would get that like watercolor, or not watercolor, but that paintbrush like drawing with the musician talking over it.
Yeah.
Giving this like interesting story, and some of it was more like mythical and spiritual. Some of it was like, no, this is a person that did exist, and they really did do all these things, and that's why they're so renowned and why we're talking about them right now. Probably my favorite of the Mythic quests was the last one, where you have to climb the mountain.
God.
That was a great mission.
It was.
I thought I had to get another upgrade. I'm like, why do I keep, like, do I need a specific armor, like Link, to get through like frosty mountains?
You can totally wander into that mission area without being on the mission.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you'll just start dying, and you have no idea why.
Yeah.
I mean, you do. He says, I've never been this cold, and you can see like ice freeze up around the frame.
And I feel like it's kind of hard. It is kind of hard to like go into that without having the mission, because like the musician's right there.
Yeah.
Like he's.
Oh, I didn't see him. Like.
Oh, okay.
I knew on the map he was there, but like I was just off because I was following the bird for whatever reason. And.
But yeah, what a cool mission, because it was a platforming challenge that still had like the Mongolian dogs coming after you, like as you climb, and once you get to the top, there's someone up there to greet you, and you have a duel with him, but you don't kill him. You just like he just teaches you how to use the
fire sword.
The fire sword, and after you beat him in a duel, like he's like, okay, like I'm happy to have taught you how this works. I'm happy to have taught you how this works. Please get out of here.
Yeah.
And like it was unique. There none of the other ones were like that. And I also thought it was cool how in Act 2, the Mythic Quest you got there took a distinct different flavor from the ones in Act 1. Act 1 was very, it was very much a standard side quest, took a little longer, had more to it, and it was interesting. There were some duels that you did. Whereas in Act 2, it was like, all right, here's a few things you need to do that before you can move on. And like the one was like, you have to go duel the other Ronin. One was like, you got to go save these villages and they'll each give you a key. And once you have all the keys, you can go and get the armor.
Yeah.
It was a nice change of pace that they kind of eased you into as you went through the game.
Yeah,
which was really cool.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, that's that. I'm done.
When I saw the Mongols using a fire sword, I was like, why the fuck can't I have that? Like, I need a fire sword. And then we got it towards the end, though.
Yeah.
But the thing about those mythic quests, besides you getting cool abilities like the explosive arrow and stuff, Heavenly Strike, is that they're taking place in the most beautiful parts of Tsushima. And the game's already beautiful, but like I remember going past this like field of purple flowers, and I was like, this looks like a place where you have a battle. And then I have a battle there with a mythic quest.
Yeah.
And then there's like the field of like white flowers and white trees, which looks
there's the
just
waterfall.
like,
you have to climb all the way down the side of that cliff.
Yeah. There's like autumn trees that you have to fight under. The one with the white flowers reminded me a lot of the last boss fight in Sekiro when you fight Ishin Sword Saint. It was literally the same thing. It was all just so good and so beautiful. I was like obsessed with those missions. They were my favorite side missions.
Yeah, they were really big standouts. I can't believe we went this long without talking about them.
Yeah.
But they were really big. They were really, really big standouts in terms of the side content this game provides. And they give like amazing rewards. Like it's doing one of those is how you get the longbow. And the longbow is just it does massive damage, takes longer to draw, but like it's got really good range, and you can use
the explosive shot,
yeah, which I use those a hell of a lot more than the flame arrows. Like what I would do is I'd throw a firecracker in the middle of a camp, like 5-6 guys would come over to it, and I'd just shoot an explosive arrow and watch them all die. It was
Nice.
It was so fucking cool.
Yeah,
the mythic quests. I feel like there was one in particular, another one that I wanted to bring up, and it already slipped my mind. So we can just move on.
The one with the crows.
I can't remember. Oh, the thing I kind of wanted to bring up was kind of a criticism, but it's like not too bad of a criticism. Because they really facilitate exploration through these as well. That's kind of why these take a little longer. They give you a general idea of find the blue flowers. And you just have to roam in this big circle they give on your map to find blue flowers. At one point, I think I found purple ones, and I couldn't tell if that's what they were talking about until I found the blue ones, and I was like, oh, okay, this is what they mean.
A lot of times you'll find them before you actually get the mission, and you come back. Like I remember the it was the Gasaku armor, the one with the keys.
Yeah.
I had found that stone door really early on, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? I was trying to find a way to climb. I thought it was something I had to climb around, and it wouldn't be till later you obviously find out that you get the pieces of the key and it unlocks the stone door.
With that one in particular, I think that was intentional. That was by design, because it's really close to the entrance of like the Act 2 like section, and like
it's a very narrow strip of land.
Yeah.
That you can't really miss it.
And it's like a big landmark. You go there and you see this door and you're like, oh, I guess, like, I wonder what this is for. And then as soon as I started that mythic quest and found out about the keys, I was like, they opened that door.
Yeah.
And it turns out I was right. They opened that door, which wasn't much of a stretch. Like, it was pretty obvious, but I think that one in particular was by design. Like, find that, you wonder what it is, and as soon as you get the quest, you know where you have to go, but you need the things in order to go there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Really cool.
Big standout missions, very cool. I guess the last big thing I kind of want to talk about is just like the open world and the things to do in it. Particularly like two facets that we haven't really talked about. The things to find and the way to find them, being the wind. Did we like the wind system?
Yes.
I think everybody liked it. I think some people are, I don't want to say overhyping it because it was a very clever thing to do.
Yeah.
But I think, and you have this here in your notes, it's a mask for waypoint. Like there are waypoints in this game. This is just a really creative way to mask it, and it's built in universe.
Yes.
And it accentuates even more world building.
It's thematic.
The only other game to do a creative way of getting from point A to point B was Shadow of Colossus with the light from the sword coming out. That's what it reminded me of a little bit. But then you have these other elements like following a fox to a fox shrine or following a bird to a collectible or whatever, which I thought it was a really cool way to pay attention to a beautiful world and look at the way that the pollen's flowing. Because it was like you just get that first wind gust when you hit the waypoint or when you set your destination. But then after that, the wind kind of calms down and you have to look at the direction of like the leaves or the flowers or the pollen.
Even like the water.
Yep.
And I guess another thing I want to bring up before it slips my mind, Sucker Punch are like the MVPs when it comes to the DualShock 4's touchpad. They utilized it in Infamous Second Son and First Light, and now they're utilizing it here in like a way that not many developers really have. Even first-party developers. It's pretty much...
It's its own, like... It's not a weapon wheel, but, like, so much as sheathing your sword, bowing. So many, like, little... Yeah, playing the flute. So many little actions are tied to it.
And I praise them for actually utilizing the damn thing because nobody else does. And it's always bugged me. Like this is offered, and I understand for like multi-platform games and developers that are working on the same game for multiple platforms, it's kind of hard to make that a useful function when you can't do that on any other version of the game.
Yeah.
So it's easier for Sucker Punch to do that because this is a Sony first-party game. It's going to be using DualShock 4. Like we can utilize that as a to facilitate mechanics. But like even other first-party studios haven't really utilized it much outside of like a glorified map button. So just kudos to Sucker Punch for actually using the damn thing in a really cool way, swiping up for the wind and all the other functions that you guys said. I really, really loved that and was happy that they did that way.
Yeah, there's a few games I can think of, like Dark Souls uses it for like emotes, I think. And The Last of Us did it for like the guitar.
Yes.
Which like but one of the few games for sure.
In situations in situations like the guitar in The Last of Us, which was really clever, it's just very circumstantial. This is like I was constantly swiping up on my touchpad to get the wind to show me where I needed to go. It's like circumstantial, it's like can be really clever, but this was like a primary game mechanic that I was constantly using the damn thing
totally
for. And I love that. I didn't want to go through this episode without saying something about it.
Yeah. I like the little bamboo things that you find.
Yeah.
It turned into like what reminded me of a tutorial for a fighting game. Where it's like do this combo and then you can move on to the next tutorial.
Constantly like pausing to look at your move list.
Felt like a mini game out of Final Fantasy.
Oh.
Yeah, like other collectibles that we should bring up because they were all like I say collectibles as like things to do on the map. So like Hot Springs being a location, to me that was a collectible.
Yeah.
And everything had its own little shtick. The Hot Springs, they would increase your health, but you could like sit there and get some dialogue about like some of Jin's thoughts on things that
wanting
are going
to be
on
touched by a
story.
woman.
Yeah. And we also get to see
he brings that up a lot during the game.
Does. I felt so bad. I wanted him to get
some
pussy
blue balls
so bad.
there, man.
Yeah,
even something as simple as the banners, which on the surface, every time you collect like what is it, like 10 of them, you get a new saddle for your horse.
Yeah, something like that.
But like, I felt the best part about the banners was the conversation you would have, in which Jin would tell the guy who gives you the saddles a little bit more history about the island, which again ties into everything is tying into making this one world that you're like basically living in for the duration of the game. Like there's one part where you get a saddle and then tells you a little bit about the history of the Yarikawa clan and the rebellion and how Jin's father and his uncle played into that. The origins of how Shimura and how they came to be the Jito, of the island. Lots of interesting background information that like I felt like was well delivered. It was better than just finding a collectible. You guys know how much I hate to read
Yeah.
collectibles.
Yeah.
I liked it better when it's presented like that, like as a dialogue, a story that this samurai is telling to this common peasant, and he's like, "Oh, I will pass on your story." You know, it's very
Yeah.
interesting.
The fox dens, there's a lot of fox dens, but those were so they're so cool. I always felt bad whenever I'd find an Inari shrine without finding the fox first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I love going for the little run with the fox.
Me too.
And
And
you-
then petting them.
Yeah, you get to pet him after.
Oh, and then there was that one side mission where you just see a bunch of dead fox.
Oh yeah.
That was really sad.
Hmm.
I went John Wick on those guys.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I thought the crickets were a cool touch, especially because like graveyards, they weren't markers on your map like a lot of the other locations would
Right.
be. It was like if you stumble upon an area that has a bunch of graves and you realize it's a graveyard, like it's not a marker that you can just fast travel to or find or be led
And
to.
not all of them had them.
Yeah, not all of them had. Most of them did. I think it was like
Yeah.
mostly like ones that were involved in the main story primarily didn't have them because it would kind of take away from the reason why you were there, which I respect. But most of them did have them, and it was a cool thing to. It was a cool touch. It's also very thematic. The Inari shrines were awesome platforming puzzles. Loved those. We already kind of talked about the charm system and our criticisms of that, so we don't have to go too much into that. But it was just a clever way to have like involve like Shinto, the Shinto religion, in with some cool platforming challenges. Yeah, the bamboo strikes were neat. The finding the artifacts and records were informative.
Yeah.
The artifacts especially, I felt like some of the records were really flat.
Yeah.
The most interesting
really
ones,
read them.
I read them, but like a lot of them weren't very interesting. I think they were trying to evoke like how The Last of Us does notes to facilitate environmental storytelling. I feel like some of those records were trying to do the same, but they were mostly in the regular houses, and none of them really looked all that different to really help facilitate that environmental storytelling. So a lot of them just kind of fell flat for me. The most interesting ones I felt were the conversations with the Khan that kind of give it's like some Mongols' thoughts as the story was progressing, and after like they would directly relate to like the actions that you were doing in the story and how Khotan Khan, without seeing him, was reacting to them.
Yeah, because he as straightforward as we talked about already, as straightforward as he was also pretty intelligent and probably grasped the significance of your actions even more so than like Lord Shimada or anybody else.
Yeah.
What was his line that he says to Ryuzo at one point? He's like, the samurai follow a code, they're predictable.
Yep.
The ghost does not.
Yeah.
That makes him dangerous.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was powerful, yeah. There were also not just the Inari shrines, but just the regular big shrines because the Inari shrines were smaller platforming puzzles, or sometimes they just brought you to a cool area. But then there were the big shrines that weren't attached to the foxes, that were the parkour challenges.
No, that's what I'm talking about. The Shinto shrines.
Shinto shrines, yeah, that's what they're called.
Those are the platforming. Yeah, that's what I was referring to. Sorry if I wasn't clear on that.
Those made me that was an element of Assassin's Creed that I miss, just like seeing what ledge to latch onto by just looking at the way it's like colored and shaped. I feel like Assassin's Creed eventually came to a place where you could just parkour on anything, but the like Assassin's Creed 2, the original, like you really had to pay attention to the buildings you were climbing to see how like you could ascend. And I feel like these shrines did that really well.
Yeah, I was surprised because in the beginning they were very simple, and I was like, oh, I'm guessing it's kind of going to stay this way for the entire game, kind of be like more like Uncharted, where it's more about the spectacle of them, of climbing up them. But they really actually became, as the game went on, more like puzzles.
Yeah.
In that you had to navigate, and if you fucked up, like you would fall just in the middle of wherever you were. Sometimes you would have to go all the way back to the beginning and restart. Like,
Yep.
And like they even mixed it up in like in verticality versus like so there was like one I think in the second area
up wasn't always the way forward. Sometimes you had to go down,
or not even that, but there was like one shrine, one Shinto shrine in particular that was like it was like almost like a labyrinth, and there was no verticality. It was all just like flat, but it was like a labyrinth that you had to make your way through, and sometimes like climb up a ledge to then jump to another ledge and then jump back down.
And you didn't swing a tree over like the cliff into the next like little paddock.
Yeah, you didn't really like climb up so much as you climbed forward, which was really, really cool to see that mixed up. Not to say anything bad about the verticality of most of them, but like it was just really cool to be able to do that. And like even later, some of the other shrines that you find, there's like multiple paths, and like it kind of was difficult to discern like which one is the path forward and which is the one to like a side thing with like a flower or some supplies. I wound up taking the main path at some point, and I wound up doing the shrine like a second time just so I could go and get that flower, especially because flowers were such a commodity for the dyes. Like I wanted to get those extra flowers if I could.
Yeah.
But it was like a lot of those were really cool and varied. Not so challenging as like they did get a little more challenging. I kind of wish some of them were more challenging, but it's kind of hard to when you have a pretty rudimentary climbing system like that. It's kind of hard to make it challenging.
Definitely wasn't like the focus.
Yeah, right. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about before we move on to the final question? Any last notes?
I think we indirectly hit like everything we really had noted here in other sections.
Delaila looks like she has something to say.
I do. Just one thing. I don't know how the fuck Assassin's Creed could ever make a game in Japan without being compared to this game and maybe being inferior. I don't think
they will.
They
at
can't.
This point, I think the boat has shipped on that.
Yeah.
People have been asking for a decade.
I'm gonna straight up say like this is better than Assassin's Creed.
Oh yeah,
like,
for sure.
I hate how people keep comparing it when the combat in this is so much more in depth than Assassin's Creed. Like, not to shit on it. Like, I did enjoy some of the earlier Assassin's Creed games. I haven't played them in a very long time, but
I think a lot of people have just been begging Ubisoft to make a feudal Japan Assassin's Creed, and now at this point that ship has sailed. You 100. But I have a feeling from a business perspective, they're going to look at the sales of this game, the success of this game, and think, shit, why haven't we done this? We got to do this. And then it's going to be it's going to be looked at and it's going to be a reverse. This is going to be if they do that, it's going to be compared to Ghost of Tsushima, and not in a positive way.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like I said before, a single word summarization of this game: fluid, especially when it comes to the combat. Assassin's Creed, I don't think it's unfair to say it's a bit janky when it comes to combat.
It's definitely improved. I
haven't played it in a long time.
Yeah. No, the Odyssey and Origins have made it a little more methodical, like Dark Souls-like, but forgiving, in terms of like locking on and attacking. It's definitely more fluid, but just Ghost of Tsushima as a whole is fluid. Like the way you go to side missions, like Assassin's Creed bogs you down with freaking objectives, and this didn't. I platinumed the game 10 minutes after I beat it. That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else?
No, sorry, I'm done now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. The final question I want to bring up is just: is there going to be a sequel? I mean, chances are, from a business perspective, there will be a sequel to this game because it's been really successful, really well received. Where can they go with that? Do we think that it'll take us to the mainland of Japan, or do we think it'll be a story of Jin versus the Shogun? What will they do from here on out?
I want it to be stated here and now. I don't want there to be a sequel. I wish.
Neither do I.
I hope Sucker Punch can like take this as their opportunity to go. Let's find another cool idea and like flex our muscles a bit. But if there has to be a sequel, I don't think it would be Jin versus the Shogun. I almost feel like it would be more interesting to see Jin infiltrating the Mongol Empire itself.
Oh, Take the fight to them.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
I don't know though. I've seen articles like, "Oh, Yuna should be the protagonist of the next one," and I'm like, I don't. I think all of these characters had pretty like good stories that concluded well and within this
No,
game.
Agreed.
I totally agree. And it's like it's also the question of like the game is called Ghost of Tsushima. It's pretty clear that the game is about
Tsushima.
It's about Jin and in Tsushima. Now he's still as a character is the Ghost of Tsushima, even if he goes to mainland Japan or takes the fight to the Mongolian Empire. But like, how do you? I guess like, do you change your marketing strategy?
There was another Mongol invasion as well, but I feel like what you said before is if they made a sequel, what you said before is probably what would happen is we would get far more into the politics of the shogunate and the Jito.
Yeah.
And we would see more of that, like more of the samurai coming down on the people who are now somewhat empowered because of Jin's actions.
Yeah, I like you guys don't want a sequel. I don't see how they can do it. I feel like this ended so well. It felt very conclusive, and I feel like if they continue, it might have the Last of Us Part 2 syndrome, which I still think was good, but it might be divisive. But I also, like, how do you choose what the decision that you end the game differently? Like we all end, well, I ended the game differently from you guys, but like, does Lord Shimura kill himself? Does he stay alive? Like,
so
is he even a factor in this?
To that, I will say, like, Infamous 1 had a different ending depending on your morality, and they still made one of those. Like, this is the canon going into 2. They could like regulate that in some way.
I think they would have Jin embracing the ghost be the canon ending.
I agree.
And Lord Shimura is hunting you.
But then if you do that though, for the people that made that decision, like Delaila, it kind of diminishes their choice.
Yeah.
And would be ashamed to do that, especially when this offers such a gratifying choice at the end.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I don't want that to be a sequel. At least Jin's story, yeah.
I totally agree. I love this. I love this game. I do wish there was more of it, but not in the sense of give me a sequel. I think that this was a good end to just move on to something else, especially because I love Sucker Punch's games and I want to see them. Even if this is a little ironic, but even if it means going back and doing another Infamous, but like the thing I liked so much about Second Son was it wasn't another story with Cole. It was a new character with new creative, unique powers, and like.
See, I didn't mind the thing about that one. I didn't mind it being a new character. What I hated was that they almost got rid of the cool comic book nature of the originals, and they made it like Seattle, the most boring city ever.
I love Seattle. Come on, man.
I think that's one of the reasons I love this game so much. Is like the first PlayStation exclusive in years not to be in the Pacific Northwest.
Word.
Yeah, so I guess we can wrap up from here.
I was just say I can't say I won't be happy if I hear an announced Ghost of Tsushima
not.
sequel. I'm definitely going to be hyped.
I wouldn't mind if it was like a completely different thing. Like it took place maybe like somewhere else, like mainland Japan or Okinawa or somewhere else, and it was a completely different character. Maybe somewhere in the future, like 100 years in the future.
What if it's like not even that far, but what if it's like Jin's son? He has a kid and you play as his son and you're dealing with like similar things that Jin dealt with the legacy of his family, but now the legacy of the Sakai clan has changed so drastically. You deal with that a different perspective of like somebody
like you're
within
a
that
misfit
clan.
in society.
Yeah, like instead of being born under this honorable clan, you're born under the venerated.
Well, there
ghost.
is no clan. There's no clan Sakai anymore.
Like
I know what you're saying. Though.
Under the sense of like the shogunate, there's not, but like Sakai still has a legacy of some sort, and you play as like his son dealing with that.
I think that would be interesting. Like it takes place in the beginning. It starts on like mainland Japan, and there's some story. Maybe he's a thief. Maybe he's fallen into like the underworld of Edo. I think Edo was the capital at the time. Was it Edo or Kyoto?
You might be.
It
might be Kyoto. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But and then maybe there's a part in the game where you actually go back to Tsushima for a bit to, what was it, Omi Village?
Yeah.
And you have to confront like that same. But I see what you're saying. That's like a good potential story as well.
So you hear that, Sucker Punch? Make Ghost of Tsushima first son. I guess. All right, I think we can wrap it up, right?
Yeah.
Delaila,
Yeah.
you got anything cool to plug?
Honestly, no. I've just been streaming on Sundays at 9:30. I was streaming Code Vein last week, which I just got into.
Okay.
And I have like streams and also some playthroughs of main story quests of Ghost of Tsushima on YouTube. If you're interested, Assassina de Space San. And yeah, I'll just probably be playing the Marvel beta on stream and Code Vein and Ni no Kuni until Marvel Avengers comes out officially in September.
Ooh, Ni no Kuni, which one?
The Wrath of the White Witch. So good.
Thanks. I still haven't played either. I want to play that.
Yeah.
Big Studio Ghibli fan, big JRPG fan, but never played either of them.
Very good. The second one, meh.
Yeah, if you liked this episode, if you're watching on YouTube, please like the episode, subscribe to the channel, and if you're listening to it on Apple Podcasts, a review would be so appreciated.
Oh, speaking of reviews, I got to give my score.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Good Lord, I keep forgetting.
The official. This one was fairly easy. The official Jason Kwasnicki score for Ghost of Tsushima is 8 katanas and 1 wakazashi.
Okay.
Can
If
I?
you don't know, wakazashi is a smaller katana.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
samurai would carry a large sword that they would set aside when they went indoors, but they would keep their wakazashi short sword.
Jason, is this your game of the year? You could decline to answer
Potentially,
that.
yes. It's actually potential. It's in my running for game of the generation.
What's ooh,
Wow.
generation. Damn.
Yeah.
I
At first I was very hesitant to say that, but at the end of the game, I can definitively say it's in the running. I'm
Yeah.
not saying it is in my running. It's in the top 3 right now.
Nice.
What about you, Delaila?
I honestly can't choose between this, Final Fantasy VII, and The Last of Us 2 because I like them all in very different ways.
Yeah.
But this is definitely my game of the year so far. Yes.
I'm between
Nice.
I'm between this and Final Fantasy VII remake for my game of the year, but I think it's edging closer to Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah.
To that end.
It's a lot of, I mean, we don't need to talk about it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go watch our episode on Final Fantasy
Yeah.
VII to hear our
Yeah.
thoughts on that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we'll probably eventually have a game of the year thing, maybe.
Yes, probably. We'll figure that out come closer to the end of the year. Yeah, if you're listening.
Anyway, yeah, this game gets an 8.5 out of 10 from me.
Cool. Yeah. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, yeah, rating a review would be so welcome. 5 stars preferred, obviously, and tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Comment on the show on YouTube if you could. I do want to give just 2 shout outs that I have in mind. I want to give a shout out to Dr. Dinchak on YouTube.
Yeah.
They are a very frequent commenter, giving us feedback regularly and their thoughts on the games that we play. And I appreciate that so much. Thank you so much for doing
Definitely.
that. I would love more people to do that. Follow in their footsteps and just give us whatever feedback you can. I also want to give a shout out to a actual personal friend of mine. Goes by the tag of AO Artist on Twitter. They're also constantly telling me their thoughts on the show, listens to almost every episode, and I just can't overstate how much I appreciate the feedback from everyone that gives it.
Yep.
In either verbal form, just shooting me a text or a comment on YouTube or a rating or review on iTunes. I cannot tell you how much it means to me and to all of us, really. So please continue to do it. Share the show also with your friends, your family, your pets, your kids. Maybe not your kids. We curse a lot. It just the bigger we get, the more likely we are to spin off and do like other things with this channel and this group, if you will. Because we really want to do more, but we need to, I guess, justify that time. We love doing this show. We're going to continue doing it, but the more the more you tell us that you're liking it, the more likely we are to do those things. And speaking of continuing to do the show, hey Jason, what are we playing next?
Oh, the one of my other contenders for Game of the Generation, God of War
Oh
2018.
Yeah, it should be noted we're playing the 2018 God of War, the newest one. It could also be thought of as God of War 4. I will say, like, with that episode, we are gonna dip into the original trilogy a little bit.
Yeah,
So if you,
not do not play that game thinking that it was a reboot.
I mean,
It is very much
it's
a continuation of the story of Kratos.
it's weird because you can play through that game without having prior knowledge, but it gives you so much more context behind
Totally.
Kratos' character if you know what happened in the original trilogy at the very least. So
Maybe if you don't like the playstyle of the old ones, you don't want to go back, at least like read a little bit.
yeah,
While
we'll try to with that episode, you know, not to say at the top of the show, like we'll try to dance around things that happened in the original trilogy a little bit and not like spoil too much of those, but we will go into what the game itself goes into. So be prepared for that if you decide to follow through with our next episode. So yeah, thanks for listening.
Bye.
bye bye.